Chapter 299. Chu Yang only felt a huge force pulling him forward. He almost couldn't stand still. The body parts of the snake in front of him seemed to have encountered a hurricane. They rushed toward the mouth of the huge snake and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then, Chu Yang felt his arms lighten. The black steel flew out and entered the mouth of that strange snake with a gulp sound. Without the black steel, his body suddenly became light. He immediately floated up and flew toward the mouth of the snake with the huge suction force. Chu Yang was shocked. He suddenly activated his martial energy. The sword tip and sword tip of the Calamity Sword appeared on the sword in his hand. He suddenly slashed down. With a poof, the Calamity Sword sank into the strange snake's head. A gush of blood gushed out, and the world suddenly turned dark. The strange snake was in pain, and it suddenly raised its head and roared. Then Chu Yang felt his head become dizzy, and he floated up. When he opened his eyes, he found that he had left the area of deep water and arrived at a patch of blue water. Looking up, he could vaguely see the sky through the water's surface. He was actually almost at the surface of the water. Chu Yang's heart was still beating fast. This snake was really too strong. He calmed down and looked inside. He saw that the Calamity Sword was still in his dantian, but the sword in his hand was lost in the water. With a poof, Chu Yang came out of the water. He took a deep breath. If he didn't have the Calamity space, he would have suffocated inside. But what was going on? In his previous life, there was no such snake. Why did it appear in this life? Also, this snake seemed to only want to stop him from getting the third fragment of the Calamity Sword. It didn't have much hostility toward him. What did this mean? He had already felt the call of the third fragment of the Calamity Sword. Was it not enough to get the third fragment? Chu Yang smiled wryly. If the requirement to obtain the third fragment was to slay the snake, then even the Sword King might not be able to do it. In his dantian, the sword tip of the Calamity Sword was moving restlessly. If you want to obtain the third fragment of the Calamity Sword, when the time is right, you will be able to obtain it without any danger. This poisonous flood dragon will also not appear. However, if you try to obtain it before the time is right, you will attract the poisonous flood dragon's attention. At that time, you must kill the poisonous flood dragon to obtain the third fragment of the Calamity Sword. In his consciousness, the sword spirit spoke slowly, full of schadenfreude. Fuck! Chu Yang angrily barged into the Calamity Sword space and said, "Then why didn't you say so earlier? Bastard, what should I do now? Such a huge snake with the cultivation of a 7th grade spirit beast. I'm only at the revered level, how am I supposed to kill it?" "That's your business," the sword spirit said indifferently. "Who told you to be so impatient?" Chu Yang almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "However, the appearance of this spirit beast has a lot to do with you." The sword spirit saw that Chu Yang was anxious. "So," he said slowly, "you made it appear. What does it have to do with me?" Chu Yang was puzzled. Zhang Xian scratched his head. He really couldn't figure out how such a powerful monster had anything to do with him. Could it be that I want him to appear? This is simply nonsense. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of saliva. He directly snorted at such a statement. "It's because of you," the sword spirit said slowly, "because from the third fragment of the Calamity Sword, you finally embarked on a different path from the previous Calamity Sword masters. And the appearance of this poisonous flood dragon this time is because your path is different." He paused and said, "So, you have to defeat it or kill it to get it. Why is it different?" Chu Yang asked strangely. "I'm still me, and the Calamity Sword is still the Calamity Sword. How is it different?" "It's because of the sudden enlightenment you had a few days ago. It's beyond the realm that the Calamity Sword should have." The sword spirit didn't know whether he was sighing or feeling helpless or gratified. He said, "So, your path is destined to be different. It's also more dangerous." Realm? Chu Yang suddenly recalled the long period of epiphany he had a few days ago. That works? Chu Yang's mouth was wide open. "That should be it." The sword spirit said sympathetically, "Your strength still needs to be improved. But you have nothing better to do. Why are you suppressing my strength?" King of Hell Chu flew into a rage. This bastard wants me to improve my strength, but he's also suppressing it. Isn't he playing with me? Or, you can find that person and fight. Or, you can fight many times. You should gain something. The sword spirit said this and quickly disappeared. That person? Chu Yang scratched his head and thought for a while. Then, he suddenly called out, Duke you? Asterisk asterisk. You bastard, you should have just told me to kill myself. Chu Yang jumped up. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He didn't even understand Duke Yu's strength. Yet he still wanted to fight one or several times with him? He could have turned me into ashes with a stretch of his hand. Chu Yang sighed helplessly. Then he climbed out of the water and went ashore. He continued to sigh helplessly. Then he hung his head and walked away. Duke Yu was shocked when Chu Yang appeared in front of him. You found me so quickly. Duke Yu was startled when he heard Chu Yang's intention. You want to make a breakthrough? So, you want to challenge me? You want to challenge me? Huh? You want to challenge me? So what if I challenge you? Chu Yang felt a surge of anger in his heart. Duke Yu's attitude made him feel very uncomfortable. Ah! Duke Yu laughed. He swayed back and forth. Really, I've never met a challenger like you. Don't laugh. Chu Yang said angrily. Ha, brother Chu, it's not that I'm looking down on you. But, you still don't have the qualifications to challenge me. Duke Yu laughed until his eyes almost disappeared. I'm not afraid to say this, even your master Meng Chao Ran doesn't have the qualifications to challenge me. Draw your sword. Chu Yang roared. Suddenly he felt a chill run down his spine. He was so angry that all the pores on his body were about to explode. Duke Yu's contempt for Meng Chao Ran completely enraged Chu Yang. Especially when he had said those words. That kind of contempt and disdain had made Chu Yang's blood boil even more. I don't even need to draw my sword to deal with you. Even if I use only 10% of my strength, you won't be able to stand it. Duke Yu looked at Chu Yang disdainfully. He even added oil to the fire. Of course, it's the same for dealing with Meng Chao Ran. Chu Yang suddenly felt that all the blood in his body was burning. He let himself be angry, and Duke Yu's strong provocation. He even forgot the purpose of his visit. Both of his eyes were completely red. He rushed up almost without thinking. Without saying anything, he unsheathed his long sword and used the move, one ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. He fiercely unsheathed it. Good sword technique. Duke Yu's eyes focused. He rushed up with one hand behind his back and the other hand waved. A tyrannical force surged out. Clang, clang, clang. The continuous sound of attacks was like the wind blowing on a lotus, or the rain falling on a banana leaf. At this moment, Duke Yu's body had already been attacked hundreds of times. However, he didn't even blink as he rushed into the sword net. With a flick of his finger, Chu Yang's long sword flew out. The sword technique is not bad. It's a pity that the person using it is not good. Duke Yu said indifferently. However, he was shocked in his heart. How could this sword technique be just not bad? It was definitely the best sword technique that he had ever seen. Moreover, it was thousands of times better than the second best. What kind of sword technique was this? If the two of them were at the same level, he would have died no less than 10 times under this sword. Duke Yu didn't think of the Calamity Sword because, firstly, in his heart, the Calamity Sword's master wouldn't be so weak. Secondly, the most important point was, the Calamity Sword hadn't appeared on this continent for 10,000 years. The Calamity Sword had never left anyone alive. Furthermore, it hadn't appeared for 10,000 years. If Duke Yu could recognize it, then he could really say, I've seen a ghost. Chu Yang roared and leaped up. The long sword flashed in the air. Before it fell, it was caught in his hand. The moment he caught the long sword, Chu Yang's body that had already started to fall suddenly rose up again. At the same time, a strong killing intent seemed to have condensed into a substance. A sword light came down from above and smashed into the ground like a meteor. It carried a tyrannical cruelty that could destroy everything. The second move, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? The sword momentum was vast and mighty, and it fell down without any hesitation. The viciousness of this move was beyond the scope of the world's understanding. Under this evil, the billions of people in the world could only die. Duke Yu felt regret for the first time. He regretted that he had only used 10% of his strength against the enemy. This sword was highly condensed from at least 1,000 swords. The power of this sword had far exceeded the strength that Chu Yang could unleash by 10 times. If he didn't increase his strength, he would definitely be injured by this sword. However, Duke Yu still didn't change. He said that he would use 10% of his strength. This was his extreme arrogance. After killing the enemy, he brazenly faced it. Facing this destructive move, he stepped forward. Only this time, the wave of his hand turned into a clap. Bang! Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He somersaulted and fell down. The long sword, from the hilt to the sword blade, shattered into pieces. It turned into streaks of flowing light and disappeared. However, the tip of the sword pierced through Duke Yu's left palm and right hand. Finally, half of the sword tip pierced through his shoulder. It was originally aimed at his heart, but Duke Yu raised his hands to block it and avoided his heart. Chapter 300. Chu Yang clasped his hands behind his back and watched from the side. Chu Yang felt that he understood Duke Yu's mentality better than anyone else. Duke Yu wouldn't have been so angry if it had been a normal day. But today, he was really angry because of Chu Yang. Moreover, he was on the verge of exploding but had yet to explode. Yin Wu Tian was very lucky to have bumped into Duke Yu's brows at this time. It could be imagined that Yin Wu Tian would be skinned alive even if he didn't die. In fact, Chu Yang felt that Duke Yu would have slapped Yin Wu Tian in the face if Yin Wu Tian had finally admitted defeat and said, "I'm not your fourth master, given Duke Yu's demonic temperament, why aren't you?" In short, Duke Wei wouldn't stop until he had crippled Yin Wu Tian today. At this moment, a voice rang out, "Hold on! Show mercy! Have mercy!" It was the first king-level master of the Golden Horse Riders Department, Jing Menghun. Jing Menghun landed with a whoosh sound. He was about to take 2 steps forward when Duke Yu glared at him. Duke Yu's cold eyes locked onto him. Jing Menghun felt as if the sky had collapsed in front of him. A destructive aura enveloped him. He suddenly stopped and didn't dare to take another step forward. He couldn't help but be aghast. How did fourth brother provoke such a terrible person? Even I am far inferior to this person in front of me. What should I do? Duke? Jing Menghun forced a smile. This may be a misunderstanding. Bang. Duke Yu was standing in front of Jing Menghun. He had one foot on Yin Wu Tian's chest and was motionless. Then he slapped Yin Wu Tian's tattered face and insipidly asked, "Are you my fourth master?" The corners of Jing Menghun's eyes twitched, but he didn't dare to move. Considering the strength of this person in front of me, I'm afraid that I'll end up with another person lying on the ground. It'll be useless. Duke, may I ask who you are? Jing Menghun cupped his hands and asked respectfully. Duke Yu turned his head and looked at Jing Menghun with a smile that wasn't a smile. He tilted his head and looked at Jing Menghun for a while. Then, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up and revealed a smile. "Are you Jing Menghun?" "May I ask the Lord?" "And you can call me Duke Yu." Duke Yu smiled faintly and said, "This is your brother, right? Your brother said that he's my fourth master, and you're his boss. So, are you my first master?" Duke Yu. Jing Menghun's body was covered in cold sweat. In that instant, all the nerves in his body quivered. He was a first-grade king-level expert. So, he had frequently traveled between the lower 3 heavens and the upper 3 heavens. So, how could he not know Duke Yu, who was widely recognized as a first-class devil in the underworld of the upper 3 heavens? For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Her legs felt like jelly, especially when he heard Duke Yu say, "Could it be that you're my grandfather?" Jing Menghun had an impulse to kill Yin Wu Tian on the spot. "My dear fourth brother, even if you call yourself fourth master in front of Prime Minister Di Wu, it would still be better than this. Look at what you've done now. I've also become Duke Yu's great master. Am I worthy of being this great master?" No. Wei Ju. Wei Ju, you've misunderstood. Jing Menghun didn't dare to be negligent. He hastily cleared his name. I wouldn't dare to be so arrogant even if I had the courage of the heavens. Then he fiercely winked at Yin Wu Tian. There was no need for Jing Menghun to signal him. Yin Wu Tian had already heard the words Dukyu. My mother! How did I provoke this evil star? This guy is famous for being unreasonable, so, you're not my first master? Dukyu tilted his head thoughtfully. I wouldn't dare to. Jing Menghun repeatedly cupped his hands. Bang! Yin Wu Tian's face received a heavy slap. So, you're my fourth master? Yin Wu Tian suddenly cried. Master Yi, I have eyes but failed to recognize the great mountain. I have offended Master Yu. I deserve to die. Yin Wu Tian had learned his lesson. Master Yu, please punish me as you see fit. You want me dead or alive? I won't dare to frown. He knew that he would lose his life if he didn't deal with it properly. Even now, it's already been 10 minutes. Bang! Dukyu slapped him again. I asked you if you were my fourth master. I didn't ask you anything else. Yin Wu Tian's tears flowed freely. No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. Bang! Dukyu angrily said, Motherfucker, why isn't my fourth master? Yin Wu Tian was tongue-tied. He stared pitifully for a while, and then fainted. Why isn't it your fourth master? When Chu Yang heard this, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He felt that he was too good at foresight. Jing Menghun immediately noticed Chu Yang's laughter. He didn't dare to neglect him. He hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. May I ask who this duke is? It's none of my business. You don't need to pay attention to me. Chu Yang was in disguise. So, he naturally wasn't afraid of being seen through. He casually said, I had a fight with Dukyu a moment ago. He suffered a small loss. So, he was angry when he met the fourth master. Everything will be fine once his anger subsides. So, don't worry. It would have been better if Chu Yang hadn't mentioned it. Jing Menghun suddenly felt that he was a head shorter than Chu Yang. This guy fought with Dukyu and made Dukyu suffer a small loss. My goodness! Is this guy even fiercer than Dukyu? On the other side, Dukyu couldn't help but roll his eyes. I'm really convinced. There's someone in this world who has a thicker face than me. You're bragging too much. You only used 10% of your strength, and you still have the nerve to say that? He couldn't help but slap Yin Wu Tian's face again. He angrily cursed, this star of misfortune. Everything goes wrong when I meet him. Na Ling, you haven't replied yet? Why aren't you my fourth master? Jing Menghun's whole body trembled. He saw that Yin Wu Tian couldn't hold on any longer. He rolled his eyes, and hastily took out a red cloth package from his bosom. Then he enthusiastically stuffed it into King of Hell Chu's arms. This? Dukyu, please help me. Duke, please put in a few good words for me. My brother looks like he won't be able to hold on any longer. Many thanks, many thanks. If I can escape today, I will never dare to forget Duke's great kindness in this lifetime. Jing Menghun knew that he didn't have any face in front of this devil. So, he had no choice but to use a roundabout way to save the country in a moment of desperation. Duke Yu's voice resounded in Chu Yang's ears like a mosquito's at this moment. Are you counting on me to get rid of an opponent for you? Let me tell you something. That's impossible. I can't kill a king-level expert of the Golden Horse Riders Department. You can take advantage of this situation to fish for some benefits. Can't kill? Chu Yang was startled. You can't kill him. Why are you tormenting him like this? Fuck, I was thinking of saving some effort in the future. He rolled his eyes and awkwardly said, this? Jing Menghun saw that there was a chance. So, he hastily stuffed the red cloth package into Chu Yang's hands. Then, he bowed with his hands clasped in front of his chest. Please, please. Please accept this. It's just a small token of my sincerity. Sigh. Chu Yang sighed helplessly. The other party was so sincere. If he didn't accept it, he would feel too bad. The infant lifted the red cloth just like that. Immediately, a streak of purple light came out. This purple light was rich and bright. Even Duke Yu turned his head to take a look. It turned out to be a rare purple crystal core. It was as big as a baby's fist. It contained an intense amount of vitality. So much so that the tribulation sword kept tumbling in Chu Yang's dantian. This purple crystal core couldn't be compared to the purple crystal jade essence. However, it was still a rare treasure that was only slightly inferior. To a cultivator, such a large piece could be said to be a priceless treasure, with more than enough to spare. This. Chu Yang weighed the purple crystal core in his hand. He smacked his lips and took a deep breath. Then he hissed, "It's very difficult. You also know that bastard is famous for being difficult to talk to?" Jing Meng Hun understood the meaning behind Chu Yang's words. This guy's heart is very black. Isn't he satisfied with just a purple crystal core? He hastily reached into his bosom and took out a token. Then he eagerly said, "Sir, I came out in a hurry. This is my identity token. With this token in your hand, even though you are not afraid of trouble, but in this great Zhao, it is still somewhat useful. Please accept it." Identity token? Chu Yang's eyes lit up. This is a treasure. I'm in Great Zhao right now. If I have this thing, it will be much more significant than the purple crystal core. Hey, since you're so sincere, I can only accept it. Chu Yang frowned. He reluctantly put the identity token and the purple crystal core into his bosom. Then he reluctantly sighed. Thank you very much. Jing Meng Hun's face lit up with joy. Chu Yang took the lead. He smiled and said in a graceful manner, "It's all right. I don't like to take advantage of others. You'll soon know that you won't be paying in vain today." That's right. Jing Meng Hun repeatedly nodded and opened his mouth. He thought, don't like to take advantage of others? I don't know what kind of reward this expert will give me in the future. He almost laughed out loud as he thought of this. Today is a blessing in disguise. Jing Meng Hun had never imagined that the reward he would receive from this identity token would be so unforgettable that he would never forget it for the rest of his life. Under a freak combination of factors, the leader of Golden Horse Riders Department and the boss of Butian Pavilion, King of Hell Chu, met for the first time. It was full of drama. The king-level leader of Golden Horse Riders Department shamelessly wanted to give King of Hell Chu a purple crystal core and an identity card. Moreover, King of Hell Chu seemed unwilling to accept it. It was as if accepting it was giving the other party a lot of face. "Hey, old Wei, you've already hit and scolded me." Chu Yang said in an old-fashioned manner, "Shouldn't you let me go now?" "I didn't mean it." Chapter 301. You've received a motherfucker's benefit. Moreover, you've received it in such a carefree and happy manner. But you haven't gotten anything in return. Not only have you worked hard, but you've also been angered. Moreover, you still have to release these people. I've already decided to release them. But I can't suffer such a loss, can I? Quickly release them. Chu Yang shouted. Be careful that I won't be polite to you if you don't release them. Duke Yu felt a surge of energy from his dantian. He was so angry that he almost saw stars. He snorted heavily. He didn't want to stay here and look at this vile person's face. He lifted his feet and flew up with a whooshing sound. He then said angrily, "Quickly follow me. I'll turn the world upside down with you today." He disappeared with a whooshing sound. He had been angered to the point of leaving. However, Jing Meng Hun's eyes were very different. This duke had only said a few words. Moreover, he was very impatient and impolite. But Duke Yu, who was hailed as a demon in the entire upper three heavens, didn't even dare to let out a fart. He had left behind some ruthless words. But everyone knew that he had no other choice but to say them. Normally, he would say such words when he couldn't beat someone. Awesome person. Jing Meng Hun looked at Chu Yang in awe. He had already raised Chu Yang's status to an infinitely high level in his heart. If Jing Meng Hun had been a woman, Chu Yang wouldn't have doubted that he would have given himself to Chu Yang. King-level Master Jing, why aren't you going to see your brother? Chu Yang waved his hand. His bearing was graceful and confident. His face was reserved and alienated. I'm also leaving. We'll meet again if fate allows. At this time, Yin Wu Tian crawled up from the ground with great difficulty. He couldn't even articulate a word of thanks. Then, he said a few more words of thanks. However, Duke Yu had beaten him too fiercely. So, Chu Yang couldn't clearly hear what he was saying. He nodded and smiled. Minister Chu's figure didn't move. It seemed as if he had been lifted by a strong wind. He went up to the roof with a whoosh sound. Then, he flashed and disappeared without a trace. The dragon's head can be seen, but the tail can't be seen. This is the demeanor of an expert. Jing Menghun had a look of fascination on his face. He murmured in admiration, "When can I reach such a level, Sai?" He shook his head as he said this. He knew in his heart that this was a hopeless situation. He just hoped that the other party would give him some face or repay him when they met again. This was a great blessing for him. "Fourth brother, you're too reckless. AI, how can Duke Yu be provoked by just anyone?" Jing Menghun was distressed and angry at the same time. He checked Yin Wu Tian's injuries. He shook his head as he spoke. Yin Wu Tian had barely uttered a word when he suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. Then his legs kicked and he fainted. He had humiliated this fourth king-level expert to a certain extent. He was finally safe now. But he felt that he couldn't do anything about it. A dignified king-level expert was begging miserably in front of his sworn brothers and followers. No one will know. Jing Menghun suddenly stood up. He looked at the two men who were under the restriction for a long time. Then he sighed and said, "I'm sorry." A look of extreme fear flashed in their eyes. But Jing Menghun's palms had already slammed down on the outskirts. It was a lonely hill. "There's no hurry to fight. Let's divide the loot first. Give me the purple crystal core." Minister Chu was stunned as he looked at Duke Yu's outstretched white palm. Duke Yu had reached out his hand to ask for the purple crystal core after they had arrived here. Moreover, he had a bold and righteous appearance. "Why should I?" Minister Chu was obviously unwilling. "This is the fruit of my labor." Of course, he wouldn't give it to him. He had rarely seen such a treasure in the lower three heavens. Now that he had gotten it in his hand and had eaten it, how could he spit it out? Besides, Duke Yu was rich and overbearing. Even his tea set was made of white crystals. Yet, he still wanted to snatch the purple crystal core. "The fruit of your labor? How can you say that?" Duke Yu was amused by the words "the fruit of labor." This Duke is the one who has worked, and you've gotten it. Moreover, you've gotten two things. How did you become a miser? I say, Duke Yu, with your status, you still have the nerve to ask me for such a small thing? Chu Yang rolled his eyes. That's a purple crystal core. If it's an ordinary purple crystal, I'll pretend that I didn't see it. But this purple crystal core, you must give it to me. Duke Yu was very determined. All right. Chu Yang quickly compromised. At the same time, he instructed the sword point of the Calamity Sword to suck it quickly. Just leave the shell for me. The sword point of the Calamity Sword couldn't wait any longer. Now that it heard the clear instructions, it somersaulted excitedly and came to Chu Yang's chest. Then, it silently coiled around the purple crystal core. Suck it. Hurry up. Duke Yu urged. Chu Yang put his hand into his chest and sighed. All right, I can't afford to offend you. I can only submit to your power. But Duke Yu, what do you want this for? Minister Chu didn't take his hand out. It seemed that he was very reluctant to let this guy stall for time. Duke Yu smiled proudly and said, I used a whole purple crystal to carve a purple crystal lotus throne at home. But it lacks a lotus core. This is very imperfect. This piece's shape and size are more or less suitable. Chu Yang nodded and thought in his heart, so you want to play with it? Then, don't blame me for being impolite. Since that's the case, I also want to see that purple crystal lotus throne. Chu Yang finally stretched out his hand. In his palm was the purple crystal core. It was still flickering with purple light. For you? I'm so sad. After all your hard work, it's all for someone else. This still needs to be carved properly. Duke Yu happily took it. Then he suddenly let out an sound, followed by an sound. It was an unspeakable kind of unexpected sound. Then he opened the red cloth and raised the purple crystal core high up in the sun. Is there a problem? Chu Yang said worriedly. This? What's going on? Chu Yang's expression was blank, puzzled, and also curious. It was impeccable. What's going on? Duke Yu scratched his head with an empty hand. He was puzzled. His eyes opened wider and wider. He turned the purple crystal core over and over again under the sunlight. This shouldn't be, Minister Chu also scratched his head. He said in confusion, what shouldn't be? This is clearly a purple crystal core. But how can there be no energy inside? Duke Yu looked at the purple crystal core that was shining brightly under the sunlight and said, how can such a thing happen? No energy? Minister Chu's expression became even more strange. How can there be no energy? Yes, how can there be no energy? Duke Yu was also extremely puzzled. This Duke has seen quite a number of purple crystal cores, but I have never seen such a strange thing. Logically speaking, this purple crystal core should have already turned into powder since there isn't any energy inside. But it's still intact now. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple crystal core suddenly made a popping sound and turned into powder in Duke Yu's palm. Duke Yu was dumbfounded. His eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets as he looked at the powder in his palm. Ayaya, how did it turn into powder? Chu Yang said in shock. Why did you crush it? Duke Yu, so, it was you who extracted the spiritual energy inside on the spot? Chu Yang said, what a pity, what a pity. As he said this, he shook his head, sighed, raised his eyebrows, and squinted his eyes. Bullshit. Duke Yu was furious. Do you know that even a monarch-level expert would need at least a day to absorb such a big piece of purple crystal core? Moreover, he knows the fastest way to absorb the energy. Moreover, this energy has to be converted after entering the body's meridians. Do you think I'm a supreme martial artist? Then, what's going on? It was fine in my arms for so long. But, it turned into powder in your hands. Chu Yang glared and said righteously, Duke Yu, I know you can't bear to part with it. But, you're too embarrassed to snatch it from me. So, you decided to create an eternal mystery? This Qin is too petty. I've already given it to you. Am I so tasteless? It's not like that. Duke Yu was tongue-tied. Looking at this glib-tongued guy in front of him, he couldn't say anything else. Forget it. Don't talk anymore. Let's fight. Chu Yang said dishearteningly, you're the one who contributed the most in this matter. I won't say anything if you want it. It's okay. Don't take it to heart. Bastard. Duke Yu almost vomited blood. Please. Chu Yang showed his sword. It's a small matter. Brother Yu, don't mind it. I won't mind either. Please make your move. Why would I use such a despicable method to obtain this purple crystal core? Duke Yu was seething with anger. You with the surname Chu, don't you dare look down on people through the cracks of the door. I didn't say anything. Chu Yang spread out his hands innocently. Why are you so agitated? Seeing his expression, Duke Yu became even angrier. I have plenty of this in my house. Do I need to resort to trickery to obtain it? I know that you have a lot of it in your house, right? Anyway, I can't see it, but I believe you. Chu Yang said lightly, I told you not to talk about it, but you're still talking about it. Really, isn't it just a purple crystal core? I didn't even take it to heart. Look at you, you're so anxious. Duke Yu really wanted to vomit blood. Now that things had developed to this point, it was no longer a matter of a purple crystal core. This was related to his reputation. When you reach the 3 heavens in the future, I'll give you 2 purple crystal cores. They're both bigger than this. Duke Yu said loudly, so that you won't look down on me. I don't want it. 2 purple crystal cores, is too much. Chu Yang frowned. You must have it. I don't want it. If you don't want it, I'll kill all your brothers. Duke Yu threatened fiercely. This anger almost made him faint. He had to vent it out. Okay then. Minister Chu finally relented under such a strong threat. He seemed to be very sad and indignant as he helplessly said, You can let me see it when you find it. Is that okay? You must have it. Duke Yu roared, I've never been looked down on in my life. Chapter 302. Let's fight. Duke Yu panted heavily. He felt as if his chest was about to explode. He had never felt so aggrieved before. However, Duke Yu was also puzzled. How could such a good purple crystal core not have any energy? Furthermore, it broke the moment I held it in my hands? It wasn't that he didn't suspect that Chu Yang had done something to it. However, when he looked at Chu Yang, he denied it in his heart. It's not that I'm looking down on this guy, but for someone like him to set up such a trap in such a short period of time, he would need at least 500 years of cultivation. Chu Yang naturally wouldn't be polite. He leaped up and shook his hand. A single cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. Duke Yu stomped his feet and roared loudly, as if he was venting his anger. Then he charged forward with a loud roar. Bang! It was as if fireworks had exploded in midair. The ground trembled for a moment. Chu Yang's body flew out like a meteor. He flew diagonally into midair. Duke Yu only used 10% of his strength. He staggered back 30 to 40 steps as if he was drunk. Chu Yang clearly felt that this move of his was much more powerful than the one that had surged out earlier. He couldn't help but feel refreshed. It was indeed useful. A clear whistling sound was heard in the air. The long sword circled and rolled, and a dragon-like beam of light shone brightly around it. Then, the beam of light suddenly fell down with a powerful momentum. Duke Yu snorted and punched. 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 There was a loud boom. This time, Duke Yu's entire body was blown into the air. Chu Yang spun on the ground like a spinning top. He spun continuously for hundreds of rounds. A huge pit that was hundreds of feet deep actually appeared on the ground. Just as Duke Yu was about to descend from the sky, a bright ray of light suddenly flashed from the bottom of the pit. Following that, an extremely sharp sword light suddenly shot out from the pit. Calamity Sword, Layered Heaven Sword Technique, third move, buried deep unchanging sharp will. Duke Yu was shocked. He was in midair at this moment, but the opponent was rushing up aggressively. He had no choice but to continuously attack with his palms. In this kind of response, injuring the enemy was secondary. The most important use was to borrow the recoil of the opponent's sword to find a point of impact and leap higher into the air. In this vast and empty sky, a sword light was chasing after a terrifying figure. It was like a maggot in the bones of a corpse. One was up and the other was down, and they both rushed up hundreds of feet into the sky at the same time. A shooting star catching up with the moon, nothing more than this. Both of them were in the sky. A light flashed in Chu Yang's eyes. Then he swung the long sword above his head. Suddenly, the sword's body emitted a bright light. Then a sound suddenly resounded in the silent sky. At this moment, it was as if a hurricane had suddenly, abruptly, and violently swept up. Immediately after, a glorious crown appeared in the sky. It was dazzling and clearly visible. It was as if an ancient emperor who ruled over all life and death had suddenly descended. In the sky, the wind and clouds suddenly surged. It was as if the clouds were moving in all directions and the wind was destroying everything within 10,000 miles. Everyone was gathering here. Waves of heavenly might burst forth, dignified and solemn. Calamity Sword, Heaven Sword Technique, fourth move, gathering wind and clouds as emperor. At this moment, Chu Yang also shouted out loudly, "One, gather, wind, cloud, is emperor." Duke Yu suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. Even though the power of this move had not been fully released, he already knew that he had overestimated himself. He would definitely not be able to take this move with just 10% of his strength. Helpless, he let out a long roar in the sky. Then, his entire body's energy suddenly burst forth violently. At this moment, he had already raised his strength to 2 levels. Duke Yu was helpless. He had never thought that a mere second-grade revered sword artist would be able to unleash 10 times his original strength under the control of this mysterious sword technique. The sword light was like rain, but it was majestic. It was as if this was the judgment of a king. Duke Yu felt a stabbing pain in more than 30 places on his body. In this instant he had been stabbed so many times by his opponent. Just as he was thinking about this, he felt a sharp pain in his throat. Then, there was a sharp pain in his heart. Then, there was a sharp pain in his back. Fuck! Dukyu was so shocked that he cried out in shock. Then he unleashed an attack that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Boom! Boom! The sword light and the energy continued to clash in the air, exploding and exploding. Chu Yang's body flew far away like a kite with a broken string. This time, it seemed as if he was riding on the clouds. His hands and feet danced as he flew for more than 1,000 feet. Then he smashed heavily on the ground and rolled 20 or 30 times. Then he stopped with his head and face covered in dust. He lay sprawled on the ground, and blood was flowing out from the corners of his mouth. Dukyu dodged as he fought. In the end, he used the 1,000-pound fall and the recoil from the explosion to fall into the huge pit that Chu Yang had just created. With a loud boom, a cloud of dust was raised into the air, a few streams of water splashed into the sky. By the time Dukyu came out of the hole, there was already a puddle of water below him. He had actually managed to create water out of this pit. This was a mountainous area. As soon as he came out of the pit, Dukyu quickly flew towards Chu Yang. He had used 20% of his strength just now. Under such a violent attack, he could not hold back at all. He had to make sure that he did not kill this little brat. When he arrived, he saw Chu Yang lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out. Dukyu was shocked. He had indeed used too much strength. Looking at this guy's pale face, I'm afraid that his internal organs have all been destroyed by me. He could not help but sigh. Just as he was sighing, he saw Chu Yang sitting up with his hands after twitching for a while. Don't move. You're badly injured. Dukyu's eyes widened. He looked at this guy who was just sitting there and immediately started to heal his injuries. After a short while, his face, which was as pale as a sheet of gold, turned deathly pale. Although it was ugly, it was not the face of a dead person. But why was it so fast? Just as she was wondering, she saw that Chu Yang's face had already turned ashen. Then a trace of redness appeared. What kind of speed is this? Dukyu felt dizzy. Even if it was him, he would need at least half a month to recuperate for a few days and then slowly recover. But this guy actually got better just like that? Chu Yang closed his eyes to heal his injuries. The sword spirit was very busy. The sword point was also very busy. In his dantian, the energy of the purple crystal core that he had just swallowed had just appeared in his dantian. It was suppressed by the sword spirit and completely used the energy accumulated in Chu Yang's meridians to transform it into extremely pure energy and merged it into his meridians. Chu Yang's injuries were not light. But with the help of such a huge amount of energy, his recovery was extremely fast. Moreover, he had used 4 moves of the Tribulation Sword technique in a row just now. Moreover, he was facing an invincible enemy like Dukyu. Under the huge pressure, his understanding of the sword technique became clearer and clearer. Some of the invisible barriers that originally existed were gradually fading away. At the very least, Chu Yang could feel that his martial arts were advancing by leaps and bounds right now. Dukyu's pressure was as majestic as a mountain. It was definitely not something an ordinary expert could compare to. Although he had only used 20% of his strength, that kind of spiritual pressure and the aura of an expert could not be concealed. Under such pressure, Chu Yang continued to use this enormous pressure to compress and explode the energy in his body. He continued to make progress, and continued to make breakthroughs, and continued to gain insights. To Chu Yang, this was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After a long while, Dukyu, who was meditating with his eyes closed, suddenly felt something strange in front of him. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Chu Yang had already stood up. His body was tall and straight like a sword under the setting sun, standing in the wind. The sword in his hand was shining brightly. From Dukyu's point of view, Chu Yang seemed to have the blue sky above his head and his feet under the setting sun. His clothes and hair fluttered in the wind. Dukyu suddenly felt that the current Chu Yang was completely different from the previous Chu Yang. This was a very strange feeling. Chu Yang should have achieved another breakthrough in a certain field. Dukyu's eyes flashed with a complicated light as he looked at Chu Yang. He himself was a peerless genius. He had always been dismissive of the so-called geniuses that were praised by the world. But today, he knew that there were real geniuses in this world. Furthermore, this genius was currently improving at a crazy speed. And this process was facilitated by him. If a brand new legend appears in Fort Continent in the future, then I, Dukyu, will be part of this legend's promotion. Because I have witnessed the growth of this genius. Come and fight. Chu Yang pointed his sword at Dukyu. The tip of the sword carried a sparkling light that was like a clear spring. I would like to see how much you can break through in such a short time. Dukyu snorted coldly. His body floated up as he used the ground shrinking technique to retreat backwards. However, he rushed forward as Dukyu retreated. Chu Yang only felt that the entire space in front of him seemed to be distorted. Dukyu had already appeared in front of him. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He roared, "What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world?" He directly attacked. This time, the battle between the two continued for a longer period of time. Chu Yang used the first 4 moves of the Tribulation Sword technique over and over again. Every time he used them, he had a different understanding and experience. When the battle reached its climax, Chu Yang laughed loudly and shouted, "Watch out! Bring it on!" Dukyu was excited and shouted, "A sword edge that has been famous for all eternity." Chu Yang shouted. The tip of the sword seemed to have suddenly disappeared. But the sword edge seemed to be the sun in the sky, emitting an extremely bright light. The 4th move was the sword move of the tip of the Calamity Sword. But this move belonged to the sword edge. Calamity Sword technique, Heaven Sword technique, 5th move. The sword energy whistled and the sun set on the mountaintop. But this sword here emitted a light that was comparable to the noon sun in the sky. Dukyu shouted softly, "Come!" He pounced forward and didn't try to dodge at all. He faced it head-on. Sword energy whistled and sword light flashed. Dukyu's green clothes constantly made sounds of being torn. But the more he fought, the more excited he became. He roared and attacked without defending. Chapter 303. With a sudden sound, the wind and clouds changed, but they were clearly separated. They turned into 2 torrents and rushed down towards Dukyu. Calamity Sword, Heaven Sword technique, move number 1. Dukyu was about to meet the attack head-on, but he suddenly realized that the 2 forces were one hot and one cold, one yin and one yang. They formed a whirlwind that intertwined with each other and came crashing down. There was such a sword technique in the world. Dukyu was shocked. He gathered his strength and met the attack head-on. A scorching sword wind rushed over. Dukyu's body felt as if it was on fire. He forcefully broke through, but a bone-chilling cold wind came crashing down. With a loud roar, Dukyu counterattacked with all his strength. When Chu Yang used this move, he clearly felt that his martial power was not enough. He could not even use this move completely. His strength was still not enough. His cultivation was not enough. After this exchange, Dukyu's clothes had already become that of a beggar's. Only strands of clothes were left hanging on his body. He was in an extremely sorry state. There was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Dukyu's 20% strength could be said to be invincible in the lower 3 heavens, but he was still injured by Chu Yang's sword energy. Of course, if he used a killing move, the situation would be different. But the problem was, he could not. So ruthless. Dukyu sat down cross-legged and looked at Chu Yang, who was not far away. He was not worried at all. This guy gave Dukyu an illusion. As long as he was not beheaded on the spot, this guy was almost immortal. Sure enough, Chu Yang, who had been lying motionless on the ground, slowly moved. He twitched and twitched again. Damn it. Dukyu closed his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. He focused on healing his injuries. He did not expect that he would fight with a revered sword artist to such an extent. This was really an anomaly. However, this battle had given Dukyu a great deal of inspiration, especially Chu Yang's marvelous sword technique. Dukyu even hoped that Chu Yang would have more of these sword techniques. Chu Yang was using him to practice, but wasn't he also using Chu Yang's pressure to comprehend his own bottleneck? Especially such a godlike technique, it was something that Duke Yu dreamed of. It was already late at night, and Pain Yang was already jumping up and down, full of vigor. Again. Come. After the fight, both of them felt hungry. They smiled at each other and then entered the city side by side. Duke Yu changed his clothes first and found a small tavern to eat and drink to his heart's content. Both of them were very tired and hungry from the fight. They ate and drank, which made the others look at them with sidelong glances. In the blink of an eye, the table in front of them was filled to the brim. The waiter hurriedly came to clean up the mess, but he heard the two hungry ghosts clamoring, "Give me another basin." As he shouted, Chu Yang slapped a gold ingot on the table. The shop assistant beamed with delight and hurriedly went to prepare. "Do we need to pay for our meals?" Duke Yu gnawed on the meat ribs in big bites as he squinted his eyes. "You're asking me to pay for a slap? Who is a bully like you?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. She recalled the scene when Duke Yu went to buy clothes. He actually walked into the clothing store almost completely naked. Then he took off all his clothes and put them on after taking a piece of clothing from the clothes rack. After putting them on, he walked out without even saying goodbye. The fat boss came out to stop him, but was slapped back by him. Blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. Chu Yang felt inferior to such a scoundrel. After finishing their meal with great difficulty, the two of them touched their round bellies and staggered out of the door. Behind them, whispers could be heard. "I guess these two guys are beggars. They haven't eaten their fill in their whole life. Look at their table manners." No, where would beggars get gold? It's because they are beggars that they picked up a gold ingot today. That's why they came to eat so much. Didn't you see that these two guys looked like they were going to eat their whole life's worth of food today? Yes, curse these two bastards to break their intestines the moment they leave. The waiter looked at the table full of meat ribs and the corner of his mouth twitched. Even a pack of hungry wolves can't eat so much, right? At this time, the battle in the suburbs had already begun. For 10 consecutive days, the two of them were almost inseparable from each other. Chu Yang used the first move over and over again until Duke Yu couldn't bear it anymore. "Is there anything else? You're so annoying." Chu Yang also felt that he was very familiar with it. So, he tried to use the 7th move, Sun and Moon as Thunder Generals. After a few days of fierce fighting, Chu Yang broke through for the second time in these 10 days of fighting. 4th grade revered sword artist. After a few days of smooth battles, Chu Yang finally succeeded in using the 8th move, splitting the mountain and breaking the high peaks, blood-red sky. During this period of time, the two of them fought more than 10 times a day on average. The sword spirit crazily consumed the remaining medicinal energy. Sword point and sword edge sullenly rolled around in Chu Yang's danton. Finally, almost all of the medicinal energy was squandered away. Chu Yang had also reached a breakthrough. Moreover, after being suppressed by Duke Yu these days, his realm had completely stabilized. Chu Yang was like a piece of steel, and Duke Yu was like a big hammer. During this period of time, he had been constantly hammered and tempered. Finally, he had reached the current stage. He was only one step away from obtaining the 3rd fragment of the Tribulation Sword. And this step needed to be done step by step. If the pressure was too great, even a precious jade would be destroyed. The sword spirit had grasped this point very accurately. Therefore, he timely stopped the battle. Chu Yang's meridian still had a very small amount of medicinal energy. The sword spirit didn't want to use it anymore. Those were left for the sake of saving his life in case of an emergency. On the 10th day, after the last battle, a dense aura suddenly came out of Duke Yu's body. He suddenly laughed and raised his hand. A strong suction force came out of his palm. The clouds in the sky suddenly surged crazily. They were pulled over from all directions. It was as if a marshal was gathering his troops. Thousands of soldiers and horses were rushing over from all directions. Breakthrough. Duke Yu had also broken through. Duke Yu's breakthrough was even more difficult than Chu Yang's. No one knew that he had been stuck at this bottleneck for 3 years. He was so worried that his hair had turned white. He didn't expect that he would gain enlightenment during the battle with a revered sword artist and break through in one go. After the breakthrough, Duke Yu let out a long breath. his expression suddenly became very calm. He stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the clouds in the sky that suddenly came and then slowly dispersed. His eyes were deep. "Congratulations, you've broken through," Chuyang said with a smile. "Yes, I've waited for this day for 3 years." Duke Yu smiled gently and said, "I should thank you. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid that this bottleneck would continue for a long time. But you should also thank me." Duke Yu turned around and looked at Chuyang with a smile in his eyes. "Although I don't know why you crazily broke through in such a short time, I know that you must have your reasons." "Yes." Chuyang smiled faintly and said, "No matter what, it's not a bad thing to be a little stronger." "Ha." Duke Yu laughed heartily and said, "Can I take the liberty to ask, what's the name of this wondrous sword technique of yours? Where did you learn it from?" As he said this, Duke Yu stared at Chuyang's face. "How is this presumptuous?" Chuyang chuckled and said, "I met an old man when I was at Beyond the Heavens sect. I was barbecuing meat at that time." "Ah, I forgot to tell you that I'm very good at barbecuing meat." Chuyang's eyes revealed an obvious look of reminiscence. "That old man seemed to be very hungry. We ate roasted meat together. Then, before he left, he taught me 8 sword techniques. He also said, if you can learn these sword techniques, they'll be enough for you to move unhindered in the layered heavens." What he said was naturally a real experience. However, it wasn't at Beyond the Heavens sect. In his previous life, he accidentally met an old man in Songlan battlefront in the 3 heavens. What that old man taught him was naturally not the layered heaven sword technique, but a wonderful mental cultivation method. Duke Yu looked at Chuyang's reminiscing look and finally confirmed that this wasn't a lie. This kind of look couldn't be fabricated. Moving unhindered in the layered heavens? Duke Yu sighed and said, "If you can reach a higher level, you can even dominate the layered heavens." He looked at Chuyang enviously and said, "Chuyang, this is your greatest fortune." Chuyang nodded and asked, "Duke Yu, can I ask you, what realm are you at now?" "Me." Duke Yu smiled gently. Slowly, his smile spread all over his face. He said, "My realm? When you can see it, you'll naturally know." Chuyang thought for a while and nodded. He knew that it wasn't that Duke Yu didn't want to tell him, but it wouldn't be good for him to know now. If he told you that the person who was evenly matched with you every day for half a month was actually at a realm that you couldn't imagine, it would be a blow to Chuyang's current state. Chuyang asked because he wanted to get rid of his inner demons. Duke Yu didn't answer because he wanted to maintain Chuyang's clear state of mind. Or it could be said that the question and answer seemed to be useless, but Chuyang's realm became as firm as a rock at this moment. This was a wonderful situation that could only be understood but not explained. The lotus fragrance is spreading. Duke Yu stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Ah Lu should be here too." When he said this name, Chuyang clearly saw the contradiction in Duke Yu's eyes. The number 1 in the world this time. Miss Alu should have no problem. Chuyang said softly, "I've never cared about this number 1 in the world." Duke Yu smiled faintly and said, "But women always have to find something to do. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too lonely? Let's go and take a look," Chuyang suggested. Duke Yu nodded and took the lead. He said in a deep voice, "Chuyang, when you're done with your matters in the lower 3 heavens, you must come to the lower 3 heavens in the shortest time possible." The lower 3 heavens. It's very lively now, including the upper 3 heavens. Lively? The 3 stars divine clan has appeared. Duke Yu said in a deep voice, "This is a very good opportunity for us. When you fight with the 3 stars divine clan, you'll feel that it's completely different from the heavens. It's not just the lower 3 heavens. The upper 3 heavens is facing an even more intense attack from the 3 stars divine clan. All the people outside have already returned." Duke Yu said, "This is a fierce battle, but it's also another process of elimination for the heavens." Chapter 304. The lakeside of the Lotus Lake was already crowded with people. Most of them were Confucian scholars. Their clothes were fluttering in the wind, and they looked indescribably elegant. In such an environment, even if one wasn't a refined scholar or a lecherous Mo2, one would still have to pretend to be like this. Many young people pretended to be refined scholars while glancing at the faces, bodies, breasts, waists, and other places of the young girls passing by. Then, they tried their best to pretend to be upright like a courageous and upright gentleman. They hoped that the beauty would take a fancy to them, and think that they were reliable and would repay them with their bodies. However, they didn't know that the more they acted like this, the more hopeless it was. Women didn't like hooligans, and they didn't like pointless chatter. But if you didn't even dare to chat, then you wouldn't have as many chances as a hooligan. Lotus and Heart, 3 big camps were faintly formed. One group was wearing purple, one group was wearing white, and the other group was wearing black. Chu Yang looked from afar, and knew that this group of people wearing black was Jun Lulu's camp. This nephew was worthy of being called Dark Bamboo. Even the music competition had a faint aura of an underworld society. At the center of the Lotus Lake, there were also many large boats gathered together to form an extremely large platform. It stood tall, and 7 colored ribbons were fluttering in the wind. Bursts of music were drifting in all directions. The competition hadn't started yet, but this place was already bustling with activity. Too many merchants and peddlers seized the opportunity to enter. They were using this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make money. This was a great business opportunity. Usually, even stingy people wouldn't bargain at this moment. They would slaughter to their heart's content. Chu Yang was wearing black clothes. He was slowly walking among the willow trees on the shore. His thoughts were flying, and he seemed to be aimless. His heart was also in a bit of a mess. Duke Yu had already left for Jun Lulu's big ship. But the words he said before he left had opened up a mystery in Chu Yang's heart. It also made his heart flutter in the night. He finally knew why the blue-clothed man had suddenly disappeared. He must have been summoned back by the clan. But after hearing this news, Chu Yang's heart suddenly had an indescribable feeling. When the black-clothed man was there, he tried every possible way to make Chu Yang go home with him, or take out the jade pendant to have a look. But Chu Yang also tried every possible way to escape. It wasn't that he didn't want to solve the mystery of his birth, but he was terrified. Chu Yang, who had lived 2 lives, had already seen through life and death. The only thing left in his heart was a trace of obsession. However, this was the only thing that made him feel terrified. Although Chu Yang was trying to avoid it, he faintly felt that more than half of his life experience was related to the baby that the Chu clan had abandoned years ago. There was anticipation in his heart, but there was also resistance and fear. This was Chu Yang's conflicted feelings about his life experience. But if he had really been ruthlessly abandoned, then Chu Yang would feel much more relaxed. After severing this part, he would no longer have any attachments. It was no big deal for him to wander the world. Because he didn't have any extravagant hopes in the first place, there was no disappointment. Even if he hated them, he couldn't kill them, right? But now, he knew that they might have been lost. This feeling was much more complicated. Chu Yang sighed softly. He leaned against a willow tree and looked up at the sky through the green branches. The 3 enlightened beings were above his head. At this moment, the surrounding people suddenly quieted down. At the same time, a sound of orderly footsteps was heard in front of him. A group of great Zhao soldiers, who were dressed in neat military uniforms, walked over in an orderly manner. Chu Yang looked around and saw that the entire Lotus Lake was full of soldiers. There were also some plain-clothed people who were clearly experts in martial arts. They were quietly mixed in with the crowd. Have you heard? This time's 3 Masters Conference is very important. Even Prime Minister Diwu is coming. No wonder, the security is so tight. I didn't expect Prime Minister Diwu to have such refined interests, Chu Yang frowned. Diwu Qingro is coming? But Chu Yang didn't believe that Diwu Qingro would have such leisure time. The most important thing for Diwu Qingro to do now was to be busy in his Prime Minister's mansion. If he really came, then he must have a purpose. Moreover, it must be a very important and big purpose. But what was worth Diwu Qingrou's personal visit? At this moment, a burst of flute music suddenly rose in spirals. It spiraled up into the sky and seemed to cover up all the sounds of the Lotus Lake. The sound of the flute slowly spread out. It was actually the song, Immortal Guest from the Heavens. It was full of joy and joy. Everyone who heard it couldn't help but reveal a joyful expression on their faces. At the same time, a pleasure boat slowly approached the shore. A group of people dressed in white neatly got off the boat and walked towards Chu Yang's direction. Chu Yang leaned against the tree and looked at the approaching people with an expressionless face. "Are you the big fish pulling the boat that day?" The white-clothed people approached. The leader respectfully saluted and asked, "The big fish pulling the boat that day?" Chu Yang was speechless. What kind of address was this? However, he smiled bitterly in his heart. The other party didn't know him. It was understandable for them to address him as nephew. "What's wrong?" "My elder sister Xiao Yu heard about Mr.'s strange incident that day. She is very grateful to Mr. She wants to invite Mr. to come on the boat for a chat. I don't know if Mr. will agree?" This person's attitude was very respectful and even somewhat cautious. "Your elder sister Xiao Yu?" Chu Yang's eyes flashed. "Transverse flute master?" "Yes." The big man unconsciously stuck out his chest and said proudly. Chu Yang understood. He had thought that the song Immortal Guest from the Heavens was meant to welcome Diwu Qingro. He hadn't expected that it was meant to welcome him. However, this song was meant to welcome Diwu Qingro when he arrived. It was also meant to please Diwu Qingro. It could be said that it was a win-win situation. However, if this transverse flute master Xiao Yu knew that her song had welcomed Diwu Qingro and King of Hell Chu at the same time, wouldn't her expression be very interesting? "Tell your elder sister Xiao Yu that I will come on the boat to visit her." "But not now," Chu Yang said with a smile. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the first king-level master of the Golden Horse Riders Department, Jing Menghun, walking towards him with a pleasantly surprised look on his face. So, he had no choice but to decline this person's invitation. Jing Menghun quickly walked over while they were talking. He cupped his hands in greeting. "What a coincidence! So, Mr. is here. No wonder I feel that the air in this willow forest is so fresh and refreshing." He didn't even look at the white-clothed people. The white-clothed people were about to get angry when their leader recognized that this person was the one who had been following Diwu Qingro. He was startled. He saluted Chu Yang and quickly retreated. Chu Yang smiled insincerely and said, "According to King-level Master Jing's words, it seems that I will have to live in Prime Minister Diwu's mansion. Prime Minister Diwu will be able to feel relaxed and happy every day." Jing Menghun looked up to the sky and laughed out loud. He then said, "Prime Minister Diwu must be looking for something." Chu Yang secretly laughed in his heart. He thought, Diwu Qingro must be looking for something. Diwu Qingro will vomit blood if I live in his headquarters. "Mister, if you have nothing to do, how about we go on the boat?" Jing Menghun asked enthusiastically. "Forget it. I am used to being a wild crane. I don't like worldly etiquette." Chu Yang refused. It was true that he had changed his appearance, but being able to fool Jing Menghun didn't mean that he could fool Diwu Qingro. Chu Yang thought about how he had made ample preparations at Heaven-Reaching Tower, but still couldn't dispel Diwu Qingro's suspicions. Chu Yang felt a lingering fear towards Diwu Qingro's powerful spiritual sense. If he was seen through again this time, then he would really be in trouble. "It's fine. Whenever Mr. comes, I will welcome you with all my heart." Jing Menghun didn't feel offended. He was still smiling. "Ah, King-level Master Jing isn't accompanying the Prime Minister. Where are you going?" Chu Yang asked in puzzlement. Looking at Jing Menghun's appearance, it was clear that he was going to live somewhere else. There is a small matter. The Prime Minister asked me to deal with it. On the way, I will go back to get some things." Jing Menghun said. "Go back to get some things?" Chu Yang's mind suddenly became active. "What a coincidence. I also want to go there to buy some herbs. Let's go together." Chu Yang's attitude suddenly became enthusiastic. "Good, good." Jing Menghun was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. This mysterious master was willing to travel with him. This proved that the relationship between the two sides had become closer. The two walked side by side and quickly walked. "What kind of herbs does Mr. need?" Jing Menghun asked while walking. There is nothing I can do." Chu Yang said, The day before yesterday, I had a battle with Mr. Yu. I was injured. I was looking for some spirit herbs to recover. But where can I find them in the lower three heavens? Besides, my sword was destroyed by that guy in the battle. I need some good steel and metal. Speaking till here, Chu Yang shook his head helplessly and said, "These things are easy in the upper three heavens. But here, let's not talk about it." Upper three heavens? Easy in the upper three heavens? Jing Menghun's eyes suddenly lit up. "If Mr. Yu doesn't mind, I have some top-quality materials." Jing Menghun came forward and said, "But I am afraid that the best quality materials in Mr. Yu's eyes are only ordinary goods, but it is better than nothing, huh?" Chu Yang turned his head and looked at him. He finally smiled and said, "Forget it. It is not easy for you to collect these materials in the lower three heavens. I will just find 2 pieces of iron." Jing Menghun anxiously said, "Mr. Yu, I am sincere. The materials are precious, but how can they compare to the importance of a friend?" Chu Yang stared at him and muttered, "If that is the case, I will take Mr. Yu immediately." Jing Menghun's eyebrows were raised in joy. "Well, I owe you one more time." Chu Yang sighed. He thought, "You can't blame me for this. It was you who wanted to reveal the secrets of the Golden Horse Riders department in front of me." Jing Menghun's body suddenly felt light. He almost laughed out loud to vent his excitement. "Mr. Yu, please." "May I ask Mr. Yu's surname?" King-level expert Jing asked cautiously. "My surname?" Chu Yang looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. He softly said after a long time, "My surname is Yi." Chapter 305. In the temporary headquarters of the Golden Horse Riders Department, Yin Wu Fa's room. Yin Wu Tian's head was wrapped in bandages as he sat on a small stool. He was holding a basin of water to wash his brother's feet. The hot water was steaming hot. After carefully washing his feet, he used a clean towel to wipe them clean. Then he held Yin Wu Fa's feet and gently placed them on the mattress. Then he massaged Yin Wu Fa's lower body from top to bottom. "Well, don't bother." Yin Wu Fa closed his eyes and said in disappointment, "Crippled is crippled. I can feel it. Although there is nothing wrong with the muscles outside, the meridians inside are already necrotic." Yin Wu Tian did not answer. He just silently circulated his martial energy to unblock his brother's meridians. "The person who injured you, we can't afford to offend him?" Yin Wu Fei suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yin Wu Tian's face as he asked gloomily. Yin Wu Tian still did not say anything. Yin Wu Fei sighed and muttered, "Did you see second brother Kong today?" "I saw him." Yin Wu Tian took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, "Second brother should be very comfortable and happy right now." "Haha." Yin Wu Fei laughed bitterly and said, "Kong Shangxen, that bastard, is very relaxed. He just closed his eyes and didn't care about anything." "Ha!" He looked at the wall in front of him in a trance. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "When we meet in the underworld in the future, I must find him and have a good fight. He risked his life to save a cripple like me." The last sentence was actually, he stopped talking as if he was lost in thought. Kong Shangxen's desperate roar seemed to echo in his ears, "Don't let me die with everlasting regret." It was as if he could see Kong Shangxen fighting desperately in front of thousands of soldiers and horses, charging left and right. "Don't let me die with everlasting regret." Yin Wu finally murmured and said blankly, "Wu, if there is a day in the future, don't let me die with everlasting regret." "Brother." Yin Wu Tian suddenly raised his head, "What nonsense are you talking about? Back then you and I were brothers. We roamed freely in the lower three heavens, killing and robbing. Later on, we collected money and took people's heads. We came carelessly and left carelessly amidst thousands of soldiers and horses. With one strike, blood flew and lives were lost. Later on, we saved second brother Kong. The 3 of us laughed proudly in Jianghu. Although the world called us demons, those days were the happiest days of our lives." Yin Wu Fei smiled deeply as he reminisced. Later, Prime Minister Diwu found us and established the Golden Horse Riders Department. He promised us a high position and a high salary, wealth, splendor, and we were finally able to escape from the mountains and forests. Your elder brother did not want a high position and a high salary, nor did he want to bring honor to our ancestors. But I thought, our future generations could not live in the wilderness like us, right? His eyes were full of sorrow as he said, everyone says that we are king-level masters. But who would have thought that we are so inexperienced? Even when it comes to learning to read, we had to catch an old guy and force him to teach us. If other people don't speak clearly, we can't understand them. Even if they scold us, do our future generations have to be like that too? That's why I accepted Prime Minister Diwu's invitation. I did not do it for this superior position. Wu Fa smiled miserably. Since we came to the province, the Golden Horse Riders Department has been growing bigger and bigger. Every time we acted, we were successful. Under Prime Minister Diwu's strategic planning, we were almost invincible. We became the king of the dark and gloomy world of the lower three heavens, but we were not happy. Originally, the three of us brothers ate and drank together every day. But ever since we lived a life of luxury, the three of us got together and drank together. This was very rare. Plus your second brother Kong died in battle. Wu Fa took a deep breath. His voice became hoarse. From now on, the three of us brothers will never be able to sit at the same table and drink together again. Wu Tian did not speak. He was silently massaging Wu Fa, but his face became more and more sorrowful. There will never be such a day again. Wu Fa smiled unconsciously. Then, 2 drops of tears suddenly rolled down his cheeks as he said in a daze, and all of this is because of my decision to join the Golden Horse Riders Department. It was I who pulled second brother Kong into the Golden Horse Riders Department. And second brother Kong died in battle for me. The room suddenly became deathly silent. Only the breathing of the 2 brothers became heavier and heavier. Wu Fa's eyes looked straight into the void. Then he suddenly said in a soft voice, "Little brother, I want to drink some wine." Wu Tian did not answer. He did not go to get the wine. Instead, he said to himself, "Brother, do you know? When that man stepped on my chest and slapped me again and again, I wanted to kill myself by breaking my own heart. But I did not die in the end. I did not." Wu Tian closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I am not afraid of death. But I am afraid of humiliation. That kind of humiliation. If your body was in good condition, even if the humiliation was only half of that day, I would have died long ago. But I thought, if second brother died, what would happen to your body if I died as well?" Wu Tian said in a hoarse voice, "Prime Minister Du could not possibly raise you for a lifetime." Wu Fa's face was gloomy and gloomy. His eyes flashed with a kind of longing as he said, "Little brother, wait until we destroy Iron Cloud and kill King of Hell Chu. We will take second brother's ashes back to the mountain. We will go back to the place where we came from. We will not come out for a lifetime, okay? Go back to the place where we came from. We will not come out for a lifetime." Wu Tian repeated in a murmur. His eyes shone brightly as he said in a heavy tone, "Okay." The 2 brothers did not speak. One was lying down, and the other was sitting. They had stopped all their movements and were quietly lost in thought. Their originally gloomy and untamed faces revealed a faint expectation. It seemed as if the life they had imagined was already in front of their eyes. The atmosphere in the room was dense and misty. Footsteps were heard outside. Wu Tian looked out of the window and saw Jing Menghun walking quickly towards them. His face was full of excitement. Behind him was a young man with his hands clasped behind his back. He was strolling leisurely. It seemed as if he was sightseeing in the temporary headquarters of the Golden Horse Riders Department. Wu Tian suddenly felt that this young man looked familiar. He was shocked when he saw him as he walked closer. Wu Fa saw that his complexion was not right. He could not help but ask, "What's wrong?" "Big brother Jing has returned." Wu Tian swallowed his saliva. "Fourth brother! Fourth brother!" Jing Menghun rushed into the room and said, "Fourth brother, you accompany Yi Gong to my private collection." If Yi Gong needs anything, there is no harm in taking it all away. Your private collection? Yin Wu Tian was about to say, what private collection do you have? There is only one place where we both keep our treasures. However, he saw that Jing Menghun was repeatedly winking at him with an anxious expression. Good. Yin Wu Tian immediately regained his composure and agreed. Well, you do your best to take care of Yi Gong. But if you need anything, you don't need to go through me. Jing Menghun waved his hand in a very bold manner and said, I will take something and go back immediately. The Prime Minister is still waiting for me. As he said this, Chu Yang slowly walked in. Yin Wu Tian's old face suddenly turned red as he recalled his shameful appearance that day. He sullenly stepped forward and saluted, so it is benefactor. Fourth King-level Master Yin, you don't have to be so polite. Chu Yang looked at him with a smile. He seemed to know what Yin Wu Fa was thinking. So, he kindly comforted him, victory and defeat are common in war. Fourth King-level Master, you know when to yield and when to stand tall. You are a true hero. Yin Wu Tian nodded with a grateful look in his eyes. At this time, Jing Menghun was afraid that Diwu Qin Ro would become anxious from waiting. So, he hurriedly greeted Chu Yang. Then, he repeatedly reminded Yin Wu Tian that he must accompany this distinguished guest and not disappoint him. After that he hurriedly left. Yin Wu Fa, who was lying on the bed, struggled to get up. He looked at Chu Yang with a doubtful look in his eyes. When he saw Chu Yang, he didn't know why, but he had a faint feeling of déjà vu in his heart. But he had never seen this face before. Yin Wu Fa was deep in thought when he saw that Chu Yang had turned his head to look at him. He gently frowned and said, This is my elder brother, my blood-related elder brother. Yin Wu Fa introduced him. Yin Wu Tian introduced. Then, his heart suddenly moved and he stepped forward. His eyes revealed a fervent look as he said, Duke Yi, I have a presumptuous request. My elder brother has been paralyzed in bed ever since he got injured. He can't feel the lower half of his body. Duke Yi has remarkable abilities. May I ask, what can you do? Injured? Minister Chu seemed puzzled as he asked, what kind of injury could be so serious? Many doctors in the province have not been able to find any injuries. Yin Wu Tian's face revealed an indignant look as he said, I only know that the meridians in his lower body have suddenly necrotized for some unknown reason. Chu Yang frowned and said, Oh, let me take a look. Of course, he knew why. He had been by Yin Wu Fa's side when he had been injured. It could be said that he was one of the main culprits. Now that he had come to diagnose, he would be much more accurate than the so-called divine doctor. He put on an act and extended 2 fingers to touch Yin Wu Fa's meridians. Then, he closed his eyes slightly as if he was examining and contemplating. Yin Wu Fa and Yin Wu Tian were full of hope as they looked at his face. They were counting on this remarkable Duke Yi to have a solution. The meridians below the waist are broken, and they reach the thighs. As for the meridians below, they are safe and sound. But they have lost their source and have become rootless water. They are already useless. Chu Yang pretended to sigh and said, The person who did this is very ruthless. Yin Wu Fa and Yin Wu Tian's hearts shivered as they said, Please explain in detail. It is invisible sword energy. Chu Yang's expression was heavy as he said, The sword energy is very poisonous. It has completely destroyed the meridians in the waist. This injury is incurable. Invisible sword energy? Incurable? Both of them were frightened out of their wits. At the same time, they were puzzled in their hearts. When did he get hit by the invisible sword energy? Moreover, this invisible sword energy was attacked when he was completely defenseless. Chu Yang's face revealed a puzzled look. King-level Master Yin, with your king-level cultivation, how could you not feel anything? Only when you are completely defenseless would such a situation occur, and the strangest thing is that you don't know who did it. The complexions of Yin Wu Fa and Yin Wu Tian changed greatly. They looked at each other and saw the suspicion and resentment in each other's eyes. If that's the case, then this injury was definitely not caused by a chaotic battle. Chapter 306. In fact, Wuxia had always been curious about his injuries. In his memory, he had rushed out of the heavy encirclement. At that time, after being rescued by Kong Shang-xin, he had used his 2 legs to run back. At that time, he was sure that he had not received such an attack. And this kind of attack was obviously a malicious attack. Then he fell into a coma for a month. After waking up, half of his body was paralyzed. During that month, only Cheng Yunji he had been by his side. However, there was a problem. Cheng Yunji he obviously did not know martial arts. Where did he get the invisible sword energy? But if it was not for him, no one else would have had such an opportunity. Could it be that Cheng Yunji he had arranged for someone to do it? The 2 brothers looked at each other in doubt. They did not know that Chu Yang was even more surprised. When Cheng Yunji he had brought Wuxia back, he and Gu Duxing had seen Wuxia's corpse with their own eyes. Moreover, it had been frozen into an ice cube. How could he appear here alive and well? If Chu Yang had not been tempered like a steel bar in his 2 lives, he would have turned pale with fright. Seeing a ghost, really seeing a ghost. So this bastard is not dead. Chu Yang thought to himself. Seeing a ghost, really seeing a ghost. Wuxia muttered, "What the hell is going on?" The 2 brothers' faces were very ugly. But in front of an outsider like Chu Yang, it was not convenient to say it out loud. "Little brother, you accompany Yi Gong to do his business," Wuxia urged. He needed time to calm down and reflect on his grief. Wuxia agreed. He turned around and said, "Yi Gong, please." The moment Chu Yang walked out of the door, Wuxia, who was lying on the bed, suddenly asked softly, "Yi Gong, are you from the Yi clan of the upper 3 heavens?" Chu Yang's footsteps paused. He did not turn around and said, "King-level Masterine, you also know about the Yi clan?" After he finished speaking, he did not say anything else and walked away. Behind him, Wuxia's face showed a trace of relief. He really is from the Yi clan. No wonder boss respects him so much. If he is from the Yi clan, then the familiar feeling in my heart, is it an illusion? After lying down for so long, even illusions began to appear. Wuxia's face was frighteningly gloomy. He mumbled. With a cracking sound, his right hand, which was placed on the edge of the bed, unconsciously grabbed the edge of the bed and crushed it into pieces. "Dookie, please. This is our golden horse, our big brother Jing's private collection." Wuxia led Chu Yang through a few circles. Then, they left the temporary general headquarters and arrived at the backyard of a house. They exchanged a few words, and the guards quietly hid on one side. Wuxia stretched out his hand and pressed on a big tree. A faint creaking sound was heard. The tree's dense branches suddenly moved to one side and revealed a huge flagstone. Moving the stone slab aside, a passageway leading downwards was created. "This is Prime Minister Diwu's backyard," Wuxia said indifferently. "It is also the safest place in the entire continent city." "Diwu Qingrou's backyard?" Chu Yang's expression changed as he softly repeated this sentence. This was really unexpected. This was Diwu Qingrou's backyard. Then Diwu Qingrou's hidden treasure, would it also be here? As they walked downwards, there were 3 stone doors in a row. Then, there were 3 doors made entirely of fine steel. Each door was several feet thick. Chu Yang was secretly dumbfounded. This kind of defensive density was simply unimaginable. So, what kind of treasures were hidden here? Finally, the space in front of them slowly became bigger. They walked to the end and saw 2 fine steel doors side by side. This place was probably more than 300 feet, or even 100 meters underground. But it was surprisingly dry, without the slightest bit of moisture. Moreover, the air was fresh just like on the surface. Just by looking at this hidden treasure house, one could tell how much manpower and material resources had been spent on it. This side has medicinal herbs. On this side, there are some rare and precious items. Wuxia explained. "What does Dukyu need?" "I need some medicinal herbs. I fought with Dukyu the other day for several days and nights. So, I suffered some injuries. I need to heal them." Chu Yang casually said, Moreover, my sword was broken by Dukyu, so I need some materials to forge a new one. In Wu Tian was full of admiration. He had fought with Dukyu for several days and nights, and had only suffered some minor injuries. Moreover, Dukyu was able to break Duke Ye's sword. How could the public sword of the most powerful clan of the upper three heavens be ordinary goods? How about we look at the medicine first? In Wu Tian's attitude became more respectful. He said with concern, "You can't delay the treatment of your injuries." "All right." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Fourth king level master is really attentive." This was his praise for In Wu Tian's concern for his own injuries. "I'm not in a hurry. I'll look carefully." Chu Yang smiled gently and said, "This nephew is really beyond my expectations." Then he walked to the front of the first cabinet, pressed a button, and pulled it open. Suddenly, the unique fragrance of ginseng rushed into his nose. After it was pulled open, it was clear that there were 3 ginseng plants. They had a nose, eyes, arms, and legs. They were in human form. This row of 8 cabinets is full of ginseng. Starting from this one, there are ordinary wild ginseng, red jade ginseng, snow ginseng, blood ginseng, white ginseng, purple jade ginseng, grass, and so on. Each of them is more than 500 years old. In Wu Tian smiled as he introduced them. Chu Yang exhaled. He pushed the cabinet inside, and then pulled open the adjacent cabinet. However, his right hand was tightly attached to the outside of the previous cabinet. It seemed that he was unconsciously supporting it. Then he pulled open another cabinet, and closed another one. But every time his right hand would press on the cabinet that was previously closed, he had checked more than a dozen cabinets in the blink of an eye. Chu Yang stood up. He shook his head helplessly and disappointedly and said, "The medicine is okay. It's a pity that it's not old enough. Let me look at these cabinets." In Wu Tian's face turned red with shame. "Ah, the medicines here are priceless treasures in my opinion. But Dookie has already looked at 12 cabinets, and he hasn't even seen a single one of them. The aristocrats of the upper 3 heavens are really different. This knowledge, this eyesight, this experience, this is the difference between realms." Then Dookie opened another cabinet. He looked at it a few times, closed it, and opened it again. The sword point of Calamity Sword was so excited that it was going crazy. Happy. Too happy. Every time Chu Yang opened the cabinet and closed it, the sword Calamity would sneakily emerge from the fingertips of his right hand. Then, it would silently drill into the cabinet that was already closed and feast on the contents of the cabinet. Speed. The sword point of Calamity Sword seemed to know that time was pressing. For this reason, it didn't hesitate to reach an agreement with the sword point. As a result, the speed of absorption was godly. Once it went in, it would touch, and there would be nothing left. The ginseng that had been absorbed earlier had turned into small dried radishes. Not to mention the medicinal efficacy, the sword point absorbed, and the sword point transported. As their cooperation became more and more tacit, the speed of the 2 little guys became faster and faster. After absorbing more than a dozen cabinets, the sword spirit finally joined in, unwilling to be left out. It couldn't be helped. The sword point of Calamity Sword was absorbing the essence. The remaining residue was also extremely precious medicinal efficacy. These were all piled up in Chu Yang's meridians. They were about to burst. Therefore, the sword point stole, and the sword point transported. The sword spirit was responsible for extracting them from his meridians bit by bit, and extracting them into the space of Calamity Sword. Everyone divided the work and cooperated happily. Minister Chu opened and closed the cabinets faster and faster. Bang. Open. Bang. Close. Bang. Open another one. Bang. Chapter 307. Inside this secret chamber, there were almost all the elixirs that Shamar Knight Department had plundered from all over the years. They had even extorted and robbed from others. There was also a considerable part of it, which was the property of the rich and officials after they had plagiarized the property of the rich and powerful. Almost everything that was valuable had been gathered here. Golden Horse Riders Department had a special appraisal system for this purpose. Only the high-grade items would be collected. Almost all the top forces of a country were operating at the same time. Moreover, this included unscrupulous methods. So, how big was this base? Moreover, there was also Diwu Qingrou's personal collection over the years. These were even more extraordinary. Most of them were given to Diwu Qingrou by the sects protecting the country of Great Zhao. These big sects thought that they could take out, were there any low-grade items? But now, it was all a tragedy. King of Hell Chu was like a bandit crossing the border. He began to implement the 3 empty policy. Steal it all, take it all, rob it all. Then he had to earn a super innocent reputation and the magnanimity of the number 1 clan of Upper 3 Heavens. Think about it, this was very difficult. He had to do all the bad things, and he still had to be a saint. Minister Chu swept the floor with a disapproving look on his face. He shook his head from time to time and sighed. It's a pity. If it could be 300 years old, this is actually not bad. It's well preserved. It's a pity that the color doesn't turn white. It's missing some essence. This is not good. It's a pity that this blood lotus flower can't bloom for a few more years. It's only a few more years. What a pity. This excavation is not a professional. So many roots have been cut off. What's the use? What a pity. I'm speechless. This alchemy page? It's a pity. Treasure Heavenly Matters sale. What should I say? He complained and belittled while wantonly stealing under the eyes of others. He didn't put any of the rubbish that he himself had said. 4th King level Master Yin, who had been accompanying him from the beginning, had been proud of himself. Now, his face was red and he couldn't speak. She was truly ashamed of herself. Things that were treasured by his own family were disdainful in the eyes of others. This feeling was truly indescribable. It didn't take long for Chu Yang to finish inspecting the large row on the left side. Then he moved to the right side. It was still a one-step process, opening, closing, and stealing. But this time, he had to put on an act. He couldn't just sit there and not take anything, right? His standards were too high. Hence, I'll reluctantly take one. He took out the smallest one among the 10. Well, Yi Gong, it doesn't matter if you take more, Yin Wu Tian said politely. You don't have much here. These things aren't very good. But they're still very rare in the lower 3 heavens. Chu Yang put on a sanctimonious appearance. He spoke with a noble character and unquestionable integrity. It's not appropriate for me to take more. These words made Minister Chu blush in his heart. What's wrong with taking an extra one? You've already taken everything. How can you say that? Yin Wu Tian sighed with emotion. This is truly the style of a great master. Just the fact that she was able to put herself in someone else's shoes was worthy of admiration. In less than 2 hours, Chu Yang had swept through all the cabinets. He was still not satisfied. He held 4 or 5 medicinal herbs in his hand. He turned his head to look at Yin Wu Tian and said, "These are barely usable." He seemed to have seen through Yin Wu Tian's doubts. He smiled and said, "King-level Master Yin, you don't know. My Yi clan's mental cultivation method is a bit special. Therefore, these healing items are also somewhat different from the rest. Well, if you had a treasure like a great wonder medicine, then you wouldn't need these." Chu Yang felt very strange. The quality of the herbs here is very good, and there are many of them. Almost every one of them is a rare medicinal herb. But I haven't seen a single one of those legendary great wonder medicines. This shouldn't be. Zhang Ji swallowed a piece of jade spirit ginseng. Where did it go? So, that's how it is. Yin Wu Tian said with relief. Then, his face exposed an awkward expression. But, the great wonder medicine? I remember that Prime Minister has it. But it's a life-saving item. So, he usually carries it with him? I don't know where it is. But, Prime Minister isn't here. He's at the Lotus Lake. Why don't you wait for a while? Prime Minister will certainly be willing to take it out when he comes back. So, that's how it is. Chu Yang smiled and said magnanimously, "It's not a problem. These are enough. There's no need to trouble Prime Minister Diwu." He had a guilty conscience as a thief. Plus, his identity was very sensitive. So, how could he dare to face Diwu Qingro? Let's go and see if there are any good materials for sword practice, Chu Yang said with a smile. I hope we can gain something. He urged him to stop this guy from inspecting the warehouse again. Yes, please. Come this way, Yigong. Yin Wu Tian clapped his hands and said happily, the materials over there won't disappoint Yigong. I hope so. Chu Yang smiled indifferently. He said in his heart, actually, I'm not disappointed with the herbs here. I'm very satisfied. I don't know if Diwu Qingro will cry if he finds out. The two of them withdrew. Then, Yin Wu Tian carefully locked the door. Then, he started the engine and closed the door. He was busy for a while. Chu Yang waited with a smile on his face. In fact, he wanted to say, don't be so busy. There's nothing inside. You don't have to worry about anything even if the door is wide open. Then Yin Wu Tian opened the door on the other side and said, Yi Gong, please. Chu Yang went in to take a look. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The inside was much bigger than the other side. There was a long passage that extended into several rooms. It was full of all kinds of materials. All kinds of meteoric iron, star steel, golden dragon jade, black steel, red stone, white crystal, heavenly soul jade. All kinds of lights sparkled when the door opened. They almost dazzled Chu Yang's eyes. There are indeed a lot of materials. Chu Yang smacked his lips and sighed. Yin Wu Tian was happy at first. Then he became puzzled. Why are you sighing if there are a lot of materials? He didn't know that Chu Yang's sigh was really depressed. There were a lot of materials, and they were very pleasing to the eye. But these materials were outside. They weren't covered. Moreover, a super light bulb was following him closely. How could he steal them? Therefore, Minister Chu sighed again and again. This time, he was at his wit's end. It seems that I have to choose only a few pieces. This guy is really too greedy. He had collected so many medicinal materials. It could be said that he was returning from a rewarding journey. Although these ores were rare, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Whether it was the upper three heavens or the upper three heavens, there were many more ores than here. However, he couldn't take anything away even if he wanted to. This was really a depressing matter. Chu Yang stepped inside. Yin Wu Tian followed closely behind. This time, Minister Chu brought out his real skills and carefully selected the materials. This one. Chu Yang pointed at a piece of golden dragon jade. I will have to trouble King level Master Yin to take it out for me. All right. Yin Wu Tian didn't say anything further. He moved the head-sized piece of golden dragon jade to the door. According to legend, golden dragon jade contained a strange power. Generally, this kind of jade was hidden in the depths of the earth. It was rarely seen. Chu Yang couldn't help but think, is this strange power the power of the dragon race from tens of thousands of years ago? However, he couldn't be sure about this. This one is also good. Chu Yang pointed at a fist-sized piece. Heavenly Soul Jade. No problem. Yin Wu Tian was very straightforward. He was even very happy. It seems that he has taken a fancy to many of the materials here. There is also this one. Chu Yang pointed at a large piece of purple crystal. This purple crystal wasn't small. It was about the size of half a pig's butt. All right. Yin Wu Tian diligently moved it out. There is also this one. Chu Yang resisted the excitement in his heart. He had already reached the innermost room. Unexpectedly, there was a head-sized piece of red cloud steel inside. This was really a pleasant surprise. Is there anything else? Yin Wu Tian asked. These are enough to forge a sword. Chu Yang smiled. He patted his forehead and said, I forgot the main material. I will take this piece of star steel. Since King-level Master Yin was still unsatisfied, it seemed that he hadn't reached his bottom line. Chu Yang naturally had to take advantage of this situation. He wouldn't have this kind of opportunity in the future. These. Minister Chu clapped his hands. No problem. I will help you move them out. Yin Wu Tian grinned. He thought, This dookie is still reserved after all. There are so many materials, but he only wants so little. Although these are enough to forge several swords, but no one would complain about having too many of such good materials. If it were me, I would risk my life to move a few more pieces. The more I take, the more I get in return. Chu Yang smiled and elegantly said, I will compensate you for these things in the future. I have a habit in my life, and that is, I never take advantage of others. So that's how it is. In Wu Tian suddenly realized. He said with admiration, there are very few people like Dookie in this world. Chu Yang nodded and smiled. He thought, there is only one person like me in the entire Fort Continent who can steal from others. There is no one else. In Wu Tian huffed and puffed as he carried a few pieces of ore. He wouldn't let Chu Yang reach out his hand no matter what. He played the role of a master. He escorted Chu Yang back to the temporary headquarters. Then, they parted ways outside the headquarters. Chu Yang resolutely bid farewell. In Wu Tian desperately tried to persuade him to stay. But he couldn't persuade this distinguished guest to stay. He personally called for a carriage to send Dookie to forge a sword. Chu Yang sat in the carriage. The coachman cracked his whip, and the carriage slowly started to move. In Wu Tian stood at the entrance of the headquarters. He reluctantly waved his hand. He was very polite. Minister Chu gratefully waved goodbye. You are really a good person. After walking for a while, the pieces of ore disappeared with a whoosh sound. They had already entered the space. People were shouting and horses were neighing in front. A group of people and horses were coming over. It was Prime Minister Diwu. Don't worry about them. We will go out of the city. Chu Yang snorted and arranged for the coachman. Chapter 308. After Minister Chu left the city, he immediately changed his appearance and went in the direction of Jun Lulu's fleet. The musician identity that he had been planning for a long time was finally going to be put to use. The trip to Great Jiao is finally coming to an end. The Lotus Lake was in sight. Chu Yang's figure was like lightning as he passed through the willow forest on the shore. Suddenly, he heard a chuckle and a crisp voice. The big fish pulling the boat, you're back? Chu Yang was startled and turned his head to look. He saw that under the willow tree where he was leaning on before he left, there was a young girl in white. She had delicate features and her eyes were very lively. She looked like an adorable little girl at first glance. Miss, I don't think we've met before. Why are you looking for me? Chu Yang stopped and walked to a distance of 40 feet from the young girl. Humph, I asked you to go and you didn't want to go. I had no choice but to look for you. The young girl in white wrinkled her nose and said, Besides, I'm just a flute player. Even if I told you, you wouldn't know. Ah, transverse flute master. I've long heard of your great name. Chu Yang nodded indifferently and said, I didn't expect that the world-famous transverse flute master would be such a little girl who makes people want to spank her. You dare. The young girl pouted coquettishly. She even raised her small white fist and shook it to show off her power. What's the matter? Speak. Chu Yang was very anxious and somewhat impatient. As the world-famous transverse flute master, even if she was really a little girl, she would never be so naive and unaffected. This little girl looked cute, but she was a little pretentious. Perhaps this kind of acting would be able to deal with the vast majority of people in the lower three heavens, including the people of Jianghu. But for a fourth-grade revered sword artist like Chu Yang, who had a powerful divine sense and an agile perception, this kind of trick was still somewhat childish. The young girl smiled and tilted her head to look at him. She said, Actually, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to ask, which side do you belong to? I don't belong to any side. Chu Yang said indifferently. Then why did you disturb the flute master's appearance? The young girl tilted her head and looked at him with sparkling eyes. She seemed very curious. It's none of your business. Chu Yang bluntly said, If you use these childish tricks to deal with me again, I won't say a word. This girl actually knows some charming techniques? The young girl was startled. She fixed her eyes on him. The naive look on her face gradually disappeared. Her eyes became calm and sharp. The face was still the same face, and the person was still the same person. However, the feeling he gave off was completely different. It was as if a sheep had suddenly been stripped of its sheepskin and turned into a lonely wolf. "The first time you saw me, how did you see through it?" the girl asked. Chu Yang curled his lips and said, "Nowadays, young girls are still so lovable and adorable even though they are in their 20s. It's already extinct. Otherwise, it would be a lunatic whose spiritual world is very abnormal." "Transverse flute master, are you a lunatic?" The girl was stunned. "Tell me your true purpose." Chu Yang was somewhat impatient. If she hadn't bumped into her the moment she returned, she wouldn't have even bothered with her. "Of course, I will tell you. However, I must first determine whether or not you are one of the Zither Master's people." The girl's expression became serious. Her embarrassment from being seen through by Chu Yang had disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. "The Zither Master came with 10 people. I have information on each of them." She fixed her eyes on Chu Yang. "They didn't come with you. Moreover, you came here 10 days before the Zither Master arrived. Therefore, I thought that even though you disrupted the Flute Master's appearance, you might not necessarily be one of the Zither Master's people, right?" "You are very smart. I am not one of the Zither Master's people," Chu Yang bluntly said. "That's good." The girl's expression turned cold as she said, "Moreover, your martial arts are very high. Especially when I sent people to catch that fish." The hook in the fish's mouth clearly showed that there was only one possibility. That is, you caught the fish underwater and stuffed the hook in. But the fish's scales were not damaged at all. This proves that your light body technique and agility are above the average person's. No one on my ship can match your dexterity and agility. The girl smiled slyly. "What do you want to say?" "Be straightforward." "Very simple. I will give you 100,000 taels of silver in exchange for you to do something for me." The girl smiled and gracefully took a step forward to show her perfect figure in front of Chu Yang. She softly said, "Can I?" Chu Yang bluntly refused. "I am not interested. 100,000 taels of silver is a lot. Plus a sword, how about it?" The girl said unyieldingly, "That is the top divine sword in the continent. It has been passed down for more than 1,000 years, autumn water. I am not interested in spring water, let alone autumn water. Why would Chu Yang care about a sword now? Take a piece of iron essence and casually use Calamity Sword to cut it. It is much sharper than those so-called famous swords." The Xiao Hong girl gracefully turned around in front of him and looked at him with her limpid eyes. She gently bit her lips and asked shyly, "Only if you add, yes." "What about me?" Chu Yang finally became vigilant. He carefully looked at her and said, "Miss, you are paying such a big price. What do you want to do? Do you agree or not?" the girl asked. "I agree," Chu Yang decisively said. "How can I not be tempted with such a beautiful girl in front of me?" "A promise?" The girl stretched out her jade-like hand. "A whip on a fast horse," Chu Yang righteously said. "As a person of Jianghu, promises are the most important. You should know this." Good. Smack. The two's palms hit each other. The girl felt relieved and smiled. People of Jianghu always kept their promises. People who betrayed their promises were the most despised. She naturally didn't doubt him. She moved closer to Chu Yang's ear and whispered, "I am paying such a big price because I need you to steal a zither for me. How about it?" "Steal a zither?" Chu Yang frowned and suddenly remembered. In his previous life, Jun Lu, who was supposed to win the title of the world's #1 in the Three Masters Grand Tournament, suddenly lost her precious zither and suffered a crushing defeat. Afterwards, the Flute Master and the Flute Master's clans were razed to the ground by the people of the Dark Bamboo. Not a single chicken or dog was left alive in the entire Flute clan. It turned out that the main culprit was this delicate little girl in front of him. What was even more unexpected was that after his rebirth, this kind of shady business would fall on him. "Zither Master's zither?" Chu Yang asked. "Zither Master's zither." The Flute Master nodded. "But Don't tell me you don't have confidence? Chu Yang asked. He couldn't help but feel somewhat strange. The three Masters Grand Tournament were all arrogant. How could this girl suddenly make such a stupid move? I once listened to Zither Master Zither in Iron Cloud. The girl snorted and said, I'm not as good as her. Even though I am not as good as her, I am stronger than Xiao Ju. So you stole someone else's zither? If that's the case, what's the point even if you win? Chu Yang said. Why you asking so much? You have already agreed. The flute master chuckled and said proudly, I only want the title of #1 in the world. I don't want anything else. I'm just curious. This kind of thing should be very secretive. Why are you looking for an outsider like me? Chu Yang asked in puzzlement. This was what he was really curious about. Was she not afraid of leaking the secret? Because the people from my side. Zither Master also has information. Moreover, the more people from our two clans are involved, the tighter the security is. But you are different. You ruined Xiaoju's appearance. This is the most advantageous for Zither Master. Therefore, as long as you show up, Zither Master's people will automatically look for you. Moreover, they will be very close to you. This way, you seem to be an outsider, but your chances are much greater than anyone else's. The girl counted with her fingers and sneered, Zither Master has always thought of herself as noble and virtuous. But when she can take advantage of others, that lowly servant girl is also very happy. Your real purpose is just for this kind of false reputation? Chu Yang slanted his eyes. So that's how it is. My mother caught a fish to pull the boat, and it actually attracted this kind of thing? The best in the world. The girl said bitterly, even if it is a false reputation, I still want it. The best in the world? You are not worthy. Chu Yang spat and said disdainfully. If it were not for Jun Lulu's insistence on winning fair and square, Chu Yang would have strangled this reckless girl to death at this moment. You are scolding me? The girl opened her eyes wide. She was somewhat inexplicably angry. You are scolding me? Scolding you? Not only will I scold you, but I will also hit you. Motherfucker, I really want to kill you. Chu Yang waved his hand and slapped her. He did not have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. The slap startled the girl. You promised. The girl covered her face and said angrily. He cried out in grief and indignation, as a man, and as a Jianghu man, is your promise, your oath, so worthless? Promise? Promise? Chu Yang sneered, what promise? You. The girl was extremely indignant. Even in her dreams, she would not have thought that it would be like this. You just said that a word from a gentleman is as good as a whip. Are you serious? Don't you understand? Minister Chu glared at him and shouted, even if I don't keep my promise, what can you do about it? Do you know who I am? You go and sue me. You go and spread the news. What the hell? He turned around and walked away. He spat and a voice came from afar. It turns out that there are not only idiots among men, but also among women. Not only are they idiots, but they are also brainless. Motherfucker, her chest is like a poached egg, but she still has no brain. This is really fucking strange. The girl was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She realized that she did not ask for his name. She had deliberately dismissed the bodyguards for the sake of secrecy. She had no way to deal with this hooligan. This was not a small matter. Her whole body trembled and she shouted, don't let me find out who you are. Otherwise, I will make you wish you were dead. Sob, sob, sob. She squatted on the ground and cried. Chu Yang turned around a few times to make sure that no one was following him. Then he quickly changed his appearance and sneaked onto Jun Lulu's ship. Chapter 309. Disappeared. It should have been half a month. The man trembled as he said, even the monitoring people also disappeared, bastard. Jing Menghun suddenly stood up and kicked the table. He jumped up and cursed angrily, a bunch of trash. A bunch of bastards. He roared back and forth in the room like a tiger in a cage. His face was ferocious. and his whole body was emitting a vicious aura. He turned his head around and found that the guy was still in front of him. He couldn't help but get angry. He slapped him and cursed, "Do you know that you're disgusting? Get lost." His voice hadn't faded when that man's head flew out. Blood gushed out of his neck. Jing Menghun didn't know how to control his strength. He had slapped that man's head off in a fit of rage. Fuck! Jing Menghun rushed out like a mad dragon. He cursed along the way, "Investigate. Ferociously investigate. Find him even if you have to dig 3,000 feet into the ground of Great Zhao." Everyone around saw the appearance of the first king-level expert. They trembled with fear and clamored like cicadas in winter. None of them dared to take a breath. Investigate. 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 Jing Menghun looked up and roared with grief and indignation, "You damned bastard, Who the hell are you, These words were transmitted through his entire body's strength. They were transmitted far away, and could be heard far and near. His voice was extremely sullen, depressed, indignant, and hysterical. It was as if he wanted to vomit blood. Everyone who heard it couldn't help but sigh heavily. What's wrong with this kid? Why is he making such a sound? Even if he's taken to the army's warhorse shed, stripped naked, and fed aphrodisiac to the warhorse, he shouldn't be so indignant, right? Chu Yang carefully put on his makeup in front of the mirror. Jun Lu Jia and Dukyu, one on the left and one on the right, watched as his current appearance changed little by little into another person. Moreover, they couldn't see any flaws from his figure, face, expression, and eyes. They couldn't help but click their tongues in amazement. He looked like a man in his 40s standing in front of him. His eyes were filled with the torment of wind and frost, and his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. The melancholy that flowed out inadvertently, the faint sense of loss and melancholy towards the passing of time when he looked back. Even Jun Luyao would think that Jun Qingyang was fighting in front of her if she suddenly saw it. As for the real Jun Qingyang, he immediately disguised himself as a burly man with a curly beard. Then, he got off the boat and disappeared into the sea of people. His mission was just to show his face, and then he would be back for 3 days. In the lower 3 heavens, Jun Qingyang only had yen. So, whether it was true or not, it was true. The 3 of them sat around the table, setting up a feast to celebrate. "Qingyang, I didn't expect you to have such a move." Dukyu held his wine cup and looked at Chu Yang from the corner of his eyes with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "How did you fake the vicissitudes of life between your eyebrows? You should teach me." "It's very simple." Chu Yang drank a cup of wine. He smiled bitterly and said, "You only need to say goodbye to your beloved one time, and your beloved one will die in your arms. Then, you will be betrayed by your closest brother, and you will die in the heaven of hatred. Then, you will live a new life with your memories. I guarantee that your eyes will have the vicissitudes of life even if you are a baby." "Ha ha." Dukyu laughed until tears came out of his eyes. He swayed back and forth. "Die once? Live a new life? Ha. You are so funny. Motherfucker, I didn't expect that you would be so good at telling jokes. But, you can really experience the taste of life this way." Chu Yang's serious expression only provoked Dukyu to laugh again. No one would believe such a thing. For example, you and I, one day, a friend of ours will stand in front of us and say, "Hey, brother, I have been reborn. I remember that you went to beg for food in your previous generation." I don't know how you guys will react, but in any case, I will pick up a physical copy of the world-defying stage heavens on the spot and slap it over. I will continue to slap it to death. Fuck, you are Chunwei, you are Chu Yang. Dukyu, this is feasible. Jun Lu smiled sweetly. She looked at Dukyu with her watery eyes and said, "I just don't know. If this is true, who will die in your arms?" Cough, cough. Dukyu coughed fiercely. He stood up and said, "I will go and get the wine." Jun Chulu's eyes revealed a trace of bitterness. When Dukyu came back with a pot of wine, he met Chu Yang's meaningful gaze. He couldn't help but blush. He laughed and said, "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" "Brother you, let me ask you a question." Chu Yang said lightly, "With your cultivation, how long can you live?" Duke Yu laughed and said, "This little one is touching my bottom of the sea again." He held the wine cup and pondered for a while. Then he said, "If you don't suffer a fatal injury and don't die in the hands of others, you should be able to live for hundreds or thousands of years, right?" He used an uncertain body aura. Chu Yang smiled and said, "If when you die, you still have regrets, do you have a chance to live again to make up for it?" Duke Yu looked at him and suddenly became speechless. He pondered for a while and sighed. He said angrily, "How can I know what will happen in this life? I won't hide." Chu Yang sighed and also drank a cup of wine. He patted his thigh lightly and said softly, "How can I know what will happen in this life? How long will the beauty bloom? Flowers bloom and fade in the deep valley. Who can say that he has no regrets in this life?" Duke Yu's whole body trembled. He had just raised the wine cup in the air. The wine suddenly splashed out and dripped onto the table, forming a wine stain. Just like this wine stain, at this moment, it still has the smell of wine. Slowly, it dried up, leaving only a trace. But even after thousands of years, this table can't deny that this wine stain disappeared on its own body. It died. Chu Yang sighed and said, "People are like this?" Duke Yu lowered his head and remained silent. It seemed as if he was making a difficult decision in his heart. After a long while, he raised his head and poured the remaining half of the wine cup into his mouth. He carefully swallowed it and said in a heavy voice, "Although I've wasted a lot of it, I've still drunk most of the good wine. My life will not have any regrets." Chu Yang laughed loudly. He picked up the wine pot and poured himself a cup. Then he drank it and said, "It's such a good wine. Even a drop of it is a pity." Duke Yu smiled and said, "But Chun Ho won't waste it." "Ah Jian, don't you think so?" The last sentence was said to Jun Lu Jian with a face full of saliva. Jun Lu's beautiful face turned red. She was at a loss. The zither master was as shy as a little girl at this moment. She was flustered and said angrily, "I don't understand what you're talking about. Two big men are drunk and talking nonsense. You don't know shame." Yes, I admit that I'm drunk. I'm talking nonsense." Chu Yang smiled mischievously. "Brother Yu, let me toast you again. This wine is delicious." That's right. Duke Yu said with a smile, "This is my wine. How can it not be drunk?" Ha ha. The two of them raised their cups and drank merrily. Jun Lu finally couldn't stand the two of them. She snorted coquettishly. Then she covered her face and stood up. She scolded in a flustered and embarrassed manner, "I can't stand you, humph." She turned her slender waist and disappeared, leaving behind a burst of fragrant wind. Strange. We were drinking happily. Why did she suddenly cut off her shyness? Chu Yang laughed loudly and said, She's afraid that I'll secretly drink tonight." Duke Yu danced with joy and laughed loudly. Suddenly, a shoe flew out from the other side of the veil and hit him squarely on the head. A coquettish "hein" was faintly heard from inside. The two of them were very happy. The sound of a zither sounded. This time, the zither sound lacked its usual lofty tone. Instead, it became lingering. It seemed as if a man and a woman were deeply in love with each other. It revealed the shyness, joy, and satisfaction of a young girl. It also had a little bit of anticipation, jubilation. Chu Yang laughed loudly. He pushed his cup aside and stood up. He said, "Hey, I don't have your blazing wine. I'm going back to sleep." Duke Yu was overjoyed. He pointed at Chu Yang and scolded, "You're such a flippant talker. I don't know when you'll change. Don't spill your wine. I won't spill my wine." Chu Yang smiled and turned around to go out. The sound of the zither changed. It rose with deep gratitude. Chu Yang listened attentively. It was a song called "Thanking the Emperor's Grace." The corners of his mouth revealed a meaningful smile. He laughed and said, "I'm not the emperor. But if you really want to thank me..." He winked at Duke Yu. "You owe me again. After a while, I'll go to your place. I'll ask you for 3 days." Duke Yu raised his eyebrows and said, "If you bring your good wine, I won't be stingy." Of course, of course. Chu Yang laughed and walked away. This time he really went back to sleep. Duke Yu sat quietly in front of the table. He smiled and murmured, "If you still have regrets when you die, will you have the chance to live again to make up for it?" He suddenly shook his head and slowly recited, "Who knows what will happen in this life? When will the beauty bloom? Flowers bloom and fade in the valley. Who says that he has no regrets in this life? Good poem, good poem. Chu Yang, I really admire you now." After he finished speaking, he stood up and said in a low voice, "The wine here is finished. Can I drink that cup of wine?" He frowned and paced 2 steps. He said, "You have to drink even if you don't want to." Then he rushed inside. At this moment, a gentle voice sounded, "Is Brother Yu here? Diwu Qingro wants to see you." Duke Yu stopped in his tracks. He was stunned like a wooden puppet. After a long while, he spat out his saliva and scolded, "This bastard really came at the wrong time. I was just thinking of drinking wine. I was feeling uncomfortable from holding it in and he came, puff." The pillow flew out from inside and hit his face. Jun Lu said in an embarrassed voice, "He came to see you. Why aren't you going?" Duke Yu sighed and turned to walk out. He thought to himself, "Diwu Qingro, you better give me a reason. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Step by step, he left with heavy footsteps. I wrote until 5 o'clock in the morning. I edited it 3 times. Finally, I wrote a bit of the charm I wanted. Chapter 310. It was already deep into the night outside. Diwu Qingro stood under the shadow of the willow tree with his hands clasped behind his back. Duke Yu's proud and aloof figure jumped from the dimly lit area like a dragon. He turned around and landed in front of Diwu Qingro. Diwu Qingro didn't move, but his eyes sparkled in the night. "What's the matter?" Duke Yu said, "You just left and now you're here. Do you think this is an inn?" "This is Great Jiao. It's my territory." Diwu Qingro said heavily, "Brother Yu, I've already given face to your dark bamboo. But, if I give you face, I also need Brother Yu to give me face." "Give face to you?" Duke Yu snorted and said, "Who do you think you are?" "I'm Diwu Qingro." Diwu Qingro said calmly and sharply, "Brother Yu, you and I know each other. There's no need to be like this." Duke Yu was silent for a moment. Then he said, "What's the matter? Speak." "Don't tell me Brother Yu doesn't want me to go up and sit?" Diwu Qingro asked coldly. His eyes suddenly emitted a cold light. He stared at Duke Yu and said slowly, "Or, is there something on the ship that's inconvenient for me to see?" "It's very inconvenient." Duke Yu stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at Diwu Qingro without backing down. Then, he said indifferently, "If you miss this moment, you can come whenever you want. But if you insist on going up now, I'll kill you." Duke Yu's face turned cold when he heard the words "I'll kill you." His eyes flashed with murderous intent. Diwu Qingro's heart shook. Duke Yu was arrogant, unruly, and lawless. But he also knew the severity of the matter. Duke Yu wouldn't have said such words in the past. But he was obviously abnormal today. Diwu Qingro knew the pros and cons. So, he naturally wouldn't argue with Duke Yu. He muttered, "May I ask Brother Yu's reason?" "You don't need to know." Duke Yu waved his hand and said ruthlessly, "You only need to know. Go up and you'll die. These 4 words will do." He smiled coldly. Then he suddenly opened his arms and looked up to the sky. His body slowly turned in a half-circle. Then he laughed arrogantly, "Diwu Qingro, you have 1 billion citizens and tens of millions of soldiers in Great Jiao. But if I want to kill you in Great Jiao, who dares to say no?" "You're crazy," Diwu Qingro said in a low voice. Diwu Qingro's momentum had weakened by this point. He knew that Duke Yu wasn't an easy person to get along with. If he had asked him directly, he was afraid that this fellow wouldn't have said anything. Therefore, as soon as he arrived, he put on an aggressive front, turning the grief and indignation in his heart into an obvious imposing manner. Firstly, he wanted to let Duke Yu know that it was understandable that he was in a bad mood. Secondly, he wanted to build momentum for himself and win more benefits. Third, it was to make this trip a little smoother. However, he hadn't expected that Duke Yu had taken some kind of medicine today. He didn't know what kind of medicine Duke Yu had taken, but he didn't fall for his tricks at all. In less than 3 sentences, he actually claimed that he would kill you even in front of 1 billion citizens of the great Zhao Empire. Such words. This made Diwu Qingro extremely depressed. However, Huan Zhenzhou did not dare to challenge Duke Yu because he knew that Duke Yu was a man of his words. If he said he would kill him, then he would really kill him. Even if he had hundreds of millions of soldiers to protect him, Duke Yu might still be able to do it. This was a purely unreasonable person. Even Diwu Qingro had no way to deal with this kind of Jianghu hooligan. If you tried to reason with him, he would act like a hooligan. If you tried to act like a hooligan, he would be even more of a hooligan than you. Duke Yu is worthy of being called the #1 person in the heavenly layer that cannot be provoked. Diwu Qingro sighed softly. I don't know if others can provoke him or not, but the current Yu cannot be provoked. Duke Yu snorted coldly. At this point, the confrontation between the two had come to an end. Diwu Qingro did not achieve his goal, so he decided to go straight to the point. If it was someone else, even if it was King of Hell Chu, Diwu Qingro would have continued to probe in another way. But he couldn't do that in front of Duke Yu. Because this person only believed in one principle: say it, say it. This was Duke Yu's principle. He did not have the slightest bit of reasoning with anyone. In the entire heavenly layer, the only person who could make Duke Yu take a step back was the mysterious dark bamboo of the upper 3 heavens. Other than that, even if all the big clans of the upper 3 heavens gathered, Duke Yu could say it, say it. Even if you die. This bastard did not have any scruples at all. I came here today to ask Brother Duke Yu about something. Diwu Qingro took a deep breath. His chest seemed to swell with this breath of air. Say it, Duke Yu said concisely. Who was the person who fought with you that day? Diwu Qingro said slowly. He did not wait for Duke Yu to answer and continued. Brother Duke Yu, please don't say that he is a member of the Yi clan. You know that I, Diwu Qingro, do not believe it. Who was the person who fought with me? Why should I tell you? Duke Yu laughed strangely and said, Do I need to report to you when I fought with you? What a joke. Diwu Qingro, a person can be proud and have self-respect, but don't think too highly of yourself. Diwu Qingro snorted and did not answer his question. Instead, he said heavily, He stole everything from my treasure house. Duke Yu was stunned. Diwu Qingro continued, especially the medicine house. Duke Yu opened his mouth. Diwu Qingro sighed and said, Not a single drop was left for me. Duke Yu's expression became strange. Diwu Qingro said the last sentence. It was accumulated for the great ceremony of 10,000 medicines. Duke Yu stood there dumbfounded. He was shocked by this news and felt dizzy. He knew Diwu Qingro's real identity. He also knew how important Diwu Qingro's medicine house was. He also knew how extensive the implications of this matter were. He really did not expect that Chu Yang had the ability to rob Diwu Qingro. Not even his underwear was left behind. He admitted that Chu Yang was awesome, but he did not expect him to be awesome to this extent. This was really unimaginable. If this matter were to spread out, the upper 3 heavens would be shaken. How important was the great ceremony of 10,000 medicines? It was related to the future of a super-rich clan. Duke Yu was tongue-tied for a long time. Suddenly he laughed strangely. The more he laughed, the louder he laughed. He held his belly and said, Whoa, this is fucking awesome. Hearing this good news, I am really rejoicing in your misfortune. You also have such a day. This is too awesome. Brother Yu. Diwu Qingro's face showed a look of anger as he shouted. I'm sorry. I can't help it. Duke Yu wiped the tears from his eyes and said, This matter is really satisfying. I just want to know who that person is. Diwu Qingro gritted his teeth. He was so angry that he wanted to tear this guy who was rejoicing in his misfortune into pieces. That person, Duke Yu touched his nose and smiled bitterly. I don't know how to tell you. Why? Diwu Qingrou's entire body shook as he took a step forward. He stepped out from the shadow of the willow tree. Diwu Qingrou's entire body exuded an extremely powerful aura at this moment. It seemed as if this step of his could crush the entire night into pieces. So you have reached this level. Duke Yu was startled. He looked at Diwu Qingrou deeply. His eyes revealed a blazing fighting spirit. Diwu Qingrou's eyes were somewhat anxious. He said, I just want to know who that person is. Duke Yu's mind was racing. He knew that his answer was very important. If he wasn't careful, it could lead to the destruction of the entire dark bamboo. Diwu Qingrou might not be scary, but he had a huge force behind him. Moreover, the theft of the medicine warehouse was tantamount to plucking the reverse scale from the body of a dragon. It was easy to imagine how furious this dragon would be. It wouldn't be a big deal if it was only him, but his brothers and sisters behind him. None of them would be spared. Facing the super clans of the upper three heavens, and more than one at that. The strength of the upper three heavens was no match for them. Facing a super clans that had fallen into madness. There was only destruction in front of them. Should he tell them about Chuyang? At this moment, the sound of 2 zither strings was heard. It penetrated the night sky. Then, the complete sound of the zither resounded. It was the song Hard to Find a Soulmate. Duke Yu turned his head. His face was dark under the moonlight. He was full of contemplation. His eyes flickered for a long time. He finally made up his mind. The other party had just done him a big favor. He had removed the knot in his heart and prevented a possible tragedy. How could he turn around and betray the other party? Diwu Qingrou had been staring at Duke Yu's face. At this moment, he saw that Duke Yu's face was somewhat pale. Diwu Qingrou's heart skipped a beat. He said coldly, Brother Yu? Duke Yu turned his head and exhaled. He turned his face away from the moonlight and said, I really don't want to say it. Moreover, this is only my guess. Diwu Qingrou said, I also don't know his real identity. Duke Yu suddenly thought of a wonderful point at this moment. This sentence. I am skeptical. Diwu Qingrou said casually, there are not many things in this world that Brother Yu doesn't know. I really don't know. Duke Yu glared and said angrily, Do you think I would lie to you? Diwu Qingrou didn't speak. When I met him that day, I felt that this person was very powerful. I couldn't help but want to fight. Duke Yu said, So, we fought in the suburbs for 10 days and 10 nights. 10 days and 10 nights. Diwu Qingrou murmured. His eyes revealed a contemplative look. To be able to fight with Duke Yu for 10 days and 10 nights, this person is very powerful. However, during these 10 days and 10 nights, I couldn't recognize his martial arts. I also couldn't recognize his sword skills. I couldn't recognize his body movements. Duke Yu sighed. Diwu Qingrou was shocked. Chapter 311. Even Duke Yu could not recognize the sword technique. What kind of technique was that? Diwu Qingrou did not dare to imagine. However, from his observation, he could clearly feel that Duke Yu was telling the truth. This made Diwu Qingrou puzzled. Could it be, all of this was true? But how could this be? Duke Yu was of course telling the truth. How could it be easy to deceive Diwu Qingrou? It was also because he remembered the battle that day that gave him this inspiration. This person's martial power was far inferior to mine, but he relied on his wonderful martial arts to fight me equally. He was only slightly inferior. Duke Yu said heavily. Diwu Qingrou frowned and pondered. Then he left. Duke Yu concluded. Diwu Qingrou was so angry that he glared at him. After talking for so long, it was equivalent to saying nothing? I asked him about his identity, but he only smiled and did not say anything. Duke Yu said, But I think he is not from upper three heavens or upper three heavens. This was the truth. Diwu Qingrou nodded and thought that this was more like it. If he was from upper three heavens or upper three heavens, Duke Yu and I would have known him. I have always had a guess, but I don't know if it is accurate. Duke Yu's face was serious as he lowered his voice. Diwu Qingro could not help but feel nervous. What? This person? Could he be the master of Tribulation Sword? Duke Yu frowned and looked at Diwu Qingro. Diwu Qingro's face suddenly changed. After hearing this, he suddenly felt that it was not far from the truth. No origin, unable to recognize the technique, much lower martial power, able to fight evenly with Duke Yu. Other than the master of Tribulation Sword, there was no one else. It would be very difficult to find a second possibility. But if it was really the master of Tribulation Sword, then this matter was really troublesome. According to the ancient legends, when the master of Tribulation Sword appeared, the great clans of upper three heavens would change. And the master of Tribulation Sword had to suppress the great clans of the older generation in order to support the new clans and enforce the new rules. If this was the case, would the master of Tribulation Sword be the beginning of his suppression of the clan by stealing my medicine? Diwu Qingro frowned and paced back and forth. He looked up at the sky and murmured, if it is really Tribulation Sword Master, he stole the medicine storage. This matter seems a little strange. Duke Yu said in surprise, you also think that it's the Calamity Sword Master? You believe everything I say? According to your description, that should be the case. However, Diwu Qingro thought deeper and said, sword techniques, body techniques, no one can recognize them. His martial power is low, but he can fight against a peak master. Moreover, his first opponent is a big clan. Diwu Qingro heaved a heavy sigh. He was about to leave when he stopped and asked, Brother Duke Yu, I was listening to the heavenly music on the ship during the day. Why didn't you let me on the ship tonight? I'm very puzzled about this. Duke Yu sneered and said, you can only blame yourself for coming at the wrong time. Then he remembered his own tragic incident. He gritted his teeth and said, I haven't let go of my purity, but I finally thought it through recently. I was about to drink some wine when you came. You disturbed my high spirits, and you still want to get on the ship? In your dreams. High spirits from drinking wine? Diwu Qingro scratched his head in confusion. Can't I drink a cup with you? Duke Yu was unable to restrain his anger. Women are like wine, do you understand? Diwu Qingro suddenly understood. He couldn't help but blush. He coughed twice and said, since that's the case, Brother Duke Yu, you enjoy the wine. I'll take my leave now. He felt relieved. So this guy was about to enter the harbor when I called him out and interrupted something. No wonder he looked like he had taken an aphrodisiac. Fletcher. Duke Yu snorted and looked at the sky. He ignored him. Diwu Qingro turned around and left. Duke Yu snorted as he watched Diwu Qingro walk away. He turned around and flew onto the ship like an eagle. Then he stealthily came to the door of a room. He coughed and calmed himself down. Then he gently knocked on the door. The door opened with a creak. Duke Yu's face lit up with joy. He stepped inside. Suddenly an ice-cold face stopped him. What are you doing here? Duke Yu was startled. He stammered. Drink that one. What wine? Jun Lulu said angrily. This. Duke Yu was a little confused. What's going on? In the past, Alu had always been gentle and soft when she spoke to him. Why did she change so much? He blinked and said, then I'll go in and talk? As soon as he finished speaking, he walked inside. Bang. The door slammed shut. His nose was almost flattened. He hastily dodged and escaped. Jun Lulu's hateful voice came from inside. Wine? You want a drink? How can it be so cheap? You're the wine. Stinky man. None of you are good. Duke Yu was at a loss. He stood in front of the door and suddenly froze. Ah! Chu Yang, who had been secretly watching from the side, couldn't help but laugh. He slapped the deck of the ship. He laughed until his stomach hurt. What are you laughing at? Duke Yu asked angrily. The tent under his crotch had unknowingly calmed down. I'm laughing at you. You're too. Chu Yang laughed until his whole body trembled. Too damn cute. Duke Yu snorted and said angrily, I'm here to drink. What are you doing here? I'm here to see if you can drink. Sure enough, you can't drink. Chu Yang laughed. You're not manly at all? You can't even drink wine. Duke Yu said angrily, you can't even go in. How can I drink? Chu Yang laughed. He walked a few steps forward and patted his shoulder. He was overjoyed and said, you can't be like this. Come, I'll teach you a few moves to deal with women. Duke Yu was truly in the wrong. His mistake was that he had regarded Jun Lulu as something that belonged to him. He felt very confident. Well, if a man thought like this, the woman would definitely make him suffer a little no matter how willing she was. Am I someone you can summon at your beck and call? Jun Lulu had been deeply in love with him for several years. How could Duke Yu not know? He just felt that he wasn't ready to take on this responsibility. Moreover, Duke Yu also had concerns. His cultivation level wasn't low. His lifespan was at least 1,000 years. But Jun Lulu was only a little stronger than an ordinary woman. Her lifespan was more than 100 years. 200 years would be the limit. What would he do at that time? Would he continue to face the rest of the long road alone? This was his biggest concern. However, it was Chu Yang who reminded him of his biggest concern. You can live for 1,000 years. What about her? Her life is only a short time. Don't tell me you won't even give her the happiness she craves in this short time? Wouldn't you be crueler than time? Life is short. Why should you suppress yourself? So, Duke Yu understood. So, he wanted to make up for it. So, he wanted to drink wine. He had originally thought that he was very confident, that he would be able to capture her easily, but now, he was not allowed to drink this wine. The two of them went to Chu Yang's room. They touched the wine cups and talked. From time to time, the two of them laughed together. It made people's hair stand on end. In the end, Duke Yu proudly said that he had tricked Di Wuqing Ro today. He felt a sense of accomplishment. Duke Yu's face was full of pride when he talked about tricking Di Wuqing Ro. Chu Yang was dumbstruck. Chapter 312. How is it? Isn't my idea brilliant? Duke Yu had long forgotten the unhappiness of being rejected outside the door. He laughed proudly. Brilliant. It's really brilliant. Chu Yang said with a smile. You should rejoice. I can't beat you now. If I could beat you, I would have killed you right now. Don't worry. You can rest easy after this matter is related to the illusory Tribulation Sword Master. Duke Yu patted Chu Yang's shoulder and said, besides, the Tribulation Sword Master will have a bloody battle with the big clans sooner or later. It's no big deal. It's indeed ingenious. Chu Yang gritted his teeth in his heart. Suddenly, he realized something and said in surprise, why will there be a bloody battle with the big clans sooner or later? I don't understand. Tribulation overturning the heavens. Duke Yu laughed and said, the big clans of the upper three heavens are the target of the Tribulation Sword Master. Only by overturning the original big clans can a new order be established. This is the destiny of the Tribulation Sword Master. Destiny? Chu Yang muttered, destiny? The battle will start tomorrow. Duke Yu said, we will leave here in about 3 days. Are you coming back with us or? Why wouldn't I want to go back with you? It's a pity that I haven't achieved my main goal here. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, I still have to stay here for a while to do some things. All right. Duke Yu said deeply, geniuses die young easily. You have to be careful. Chu Yang was speechless. The next day, the sun rose. The golden sunlight shone on the sparkling lake. The breeze rippled the surface of the lake, and the lake rose and fell slightly. It was quiet. Even the water birds on the shore seemed to have felt something. They were quiet and didn't dare to make a sound. Amidst the silence, the sound of a drum suddenly rang out. Don't. This sound seemed to have started from the bottom of people's hearts. It spread out and resounded through the clouds. Suddenly, the entire sky and earth were filled with intense drumbeats. The monotonous but intense drumbeats seemed to be able to arouse the most primitive blood in people's hearts. Everyone's blood suddenly surged and their blood boiled. The clouds are the flags, the wind is the trumpet, the sky is the battlefield, the sun is the lamp. The gods are the soldiers, the demons are the generals, come to war. Today, a legend will be born. Today, he would witness the birth of a legend. On the high platform, there was a burly man who was a foot tall. He was dressed in a red robe and looked like a god. He stood up and held the drumsticks with both hands. Then, like raindrops, he began to beat the gigantic drum. Just when the atmosphere was at its climax, he suddenly stopped and stood still like a mountain. While the drum beats between the heavens and the earth seemed to be still going on, a strand of intense flute music suddenly pierced through the air. The sound was sharp and loud, as if a dormant goshawk had suddenly soared into the sky. The entire Lotus Lake area, all the people who supported the transverse flute master, suddenly cheered like crazy. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, a whimpering sound of a flute drifted through the air. It was as if the widows of the soldiers on the battlefield were weeping softly with their hands covering their mouths as they celebrated their victory. Although the cheers were loud, they could not suppress this soft whimper and the grief that seeped into the marrow. The crowd became even more excited, and cheers rose one after another. However, the sound of the flute and the sound of the flute intertwined with each other and soared into the sky, not moving at all. One was loud and clear, while the other was low and whimpering. But they were neck and neck. Just when the crowd was at its boiling point, shing! The sound of a zither was like the sound of ice and snow falling from the heavens, and suddenly rang out without any warning. The crowd's emotions were suddenly suppressed by the sound of the zither, and suddenly stagnated. Zheng zheng! The sound of the zither rang out again, and ice splashed and jade fell. The cheers gradually subsided, and everyone closed their mouths and pricked up their ears. Zheng zheng! The sound of the zither finally rang out continuously, and it was getting louder and louder. It was as if an immortal had descended from the heavens, and after a moment of surprise, it floated up and once again soared into the sky, as if it wanted to return to the heavens. The entire Lotus Lake was dead silent. Only the sounds of the zither, flute, and flute were rippling in the air. The three sounds seemed to have merged together, but if one listened carefully, they were different. The flute and flute sounds had been competing with each other, and were also attacking the zither sounds. However, the zither sounds were indifferent, and carried a sense of superiority, as if it was looking down on all living things. It disdained to compete with anyone, but it stood alone, like the bright moon in the vast sky, quietly hanging high up. The celestial beauty was gentle, and did not move, but had a myriad of manners. The zither sounds only appeared for a moment, and then disappeared. Only the flute sounds and other sounds were left in the air. In the cabin, Jun Lulu faintly sighed. Duke Yu stood behind the gauze with his hands clasped behind his back, and asked, "What's wrong?" Chu Yang stood alone on the other side. His figure was bleak. It seemed that he was out of tune with this lively atmosphere. It was as if he was the only one who was sober when everyone was drunk. He heard Jun Lulu's sigh and Duke Yu's question, and couldn't help but laugh, and replied in place of Jun Lulu's sigh, "Such an opponent is unworthy of being an enemy." Jun Lulu calmly smiled and said, "Qing Yang is right." She stood up in front of the zither, and looked through the gauze at the sparkling surface of the lake. Then, she insipidly said, "If I had met Minister Chu in Iron Cloud, perhaps I would have been evenly matched. If I had played the zither yesterday, perhaps I would have been lucky enough to win. But if I were to participate in this competition with my current musical cultivation, it would have been a blasphemy to my zither." Jun Lulu smiled bitterly, and gently shook her head. Her posture was elegant, and she revealed an air of arrogance. "Not necessarily, it's hard to say who will win or lose." Duke Yu took the lead and said, "Did you see? The first king-level master of Golden Horse Riders Department, Jing Meng Hun, has entered the Flute Master's boat. And Diwu Qingro is on the Flute Master's boat today." So what? Diwu Qingrou's rallying power in Great Zhao is comparable to Kong Lai Yang. He's the best candidate. Duke Yu's eyes flashed with coldness. He's on the Flute Master's boat, and has invisibly created momentum for the Flute Master. "It doesn't matter, I'm no longer in the mood." Jun Lu smiled indifferently. I'm suddenly dispirited about the outcome of this competition. I don't want to participate anymore. I'm already worthy of master's nurturing. Jun Lu said. There's no harm in withdrawing from the heavenly sound. Chu Yang insipidly smiled and said, it's unforgivable to blaspheme the zither's soul if you drag it until the final battle. Jun Lu's eyes lit up. The spectators on the high platform were about to announce the start of the competition with a solemn face. They were about to introduce the three masters competition, when suddenly a wisp of zither music suddenly jumped out. It seemed as if a ray of sunlight had jumped out from the sea at dawn and blossomed into a myriad of multicolored lights. They couldn't help but be stunned. What's going on? The competition hasn't started yet, but the zither master is already in such a situation? This has never happened in the previous competitions of the three masters competition. What does the zither master want to do? Soon after, the zither music started to sound in a neither fast nor slow manner. It seemed as if a king was steadily walking towards the coronation throne with his chest puffed out and his head held high. Everyone was silent. Diwu Qingro had been talking to the flute master, but he couldn't help but stop talking and calmly listen. The zither music resolutely moved forward. Everyone closed their eyes and seemed to see the king treading on the blue dome of heaven and earth with an indomitable spirit. Finally, he arrived in front of the dragon throne. He paused. Then, the zither music suddenly became impassioned. The clanging sound revealed an aura of supremacy and the king of the world. It seemed as if the king was slowly turning around to face the common people of the world. His eyes were calm, but he was disdainfully looking down on the world. Then he slowly sat down. He sat on the throne. The zither music fiercely rose. It was glorious and solemn. It seemed as if all the weapons of war in the world had calmed down at this moment. The king descends to the world. All the land under the heavens belongs to the king. All the people on the shores of the land are the king's subjects. The dust has settled. The zither music fell. The blue dome of heaven was silent. There were hundreds of thousands of people on the Lotus Lake, but there was no sound at all. This level of zither music had already exceeded everyone's imagination. It seemed as if they were watching a king rise from his humble beginnings with the zither music. He waved his army and crazily fought against the world. He galloped across the battlefield and laughed as he unified the four seas. He raised his eyes to look at the world. The universe is in his heart. Only I am the king of the world. King. This is a real king. Diwu Qingro sighed softly. His eyes revealed a look of fascination. Others might feel lighter, but Diwu Qingro's lifelong desire was to sweep the universe and unify the world. When he heard this zither music, he couldn't help but feel his heart waver. He let out a long sigh and murmured, I seem to have seen a path full of killing, but ultimately successful, the path of a king. On the side, Transverse Flute Master's eyes flashed with a trace of intense jealousy. A feeling of anger and admiration swept through her heart in a flash. She is stronger than you. Diwu Qingro looked at Transverse Flute Master and calmly said, she is also stronger than him. He was referring to was naturally the Flute Master. The jade flute in Transverse Flute Master's hand quietly dropped. She powerlessly turned her head and looked at Diwu Qingro. Her cherry lips trembled. She was full of disappointment as she said, what does the Prime Minister want to know? Diwu Qingro faintly smiled. He took out a portrait and asked softly, may I ask if you have seen this person? Transverse Flute Master's body trembled. Her eyes revealed a look of shame and anger. She clenched her teeth and fiercely said, I can recognize his bones even if he turns into ashes. That bastard! It was the man with the big fish pulling the boat. Diwu Qingro's eyes revealed a smile. On Transverse Flute Master's boat, Duke Yu stood upright. His chest was suddenly filled with heroism. He felt that his entire soul was brimming with pride. Because the owner of this zither music was his lover. Suddenly, Duke Yu faced the sky and laughed. He faced the sky and let out a long roar. With one roar, the wind and clouds in the vast sky were turbulent. The roar surged. Golden stones fell down, tearing apart the white clouds in the vast sky and revealing the clear blue sky. Delightful! Duke, you let out a long and loud shout. The ruler of the 8 desolations is revered, and I'm the king of 10,000 rivers and mountains. Who dares not to obey? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.